Thank you, Jennifer. Ann, would you please read the meeting procedures?
Welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, April 21st, 2009. Agendas are available on the table in the back of this meeting room. If you are here to speak on an issue not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. When you speak, clearly state your name and address for the record. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which will be monitored by a timer on the podium. If there is a person speaking on behalf of a group with no other testimony from another member of the group, please identify yourself as such, and your time may be extended at the pleasure of the board. Keep in mind that the chairman has the discretion of limiting the total discussion time on any item. If you are hearing impaired, we have listening devices available. It is requested that all pagers and cell phones be either turned off or put in the silent mode. Thank you for your participation and cooperation.
Thank you, Ann. Now's the time for public comment, and this is the time that you can address the board on items not on the agenda, and the board is not permitted to take any action on the items addressed under public comments. But please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And may we have your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Dan Warren. I live at 11490 Silverford Drive in Truckee, California. And thank you for allowing me to come and talk with you today. I'm talking to you because about a year ago, I read some articles on how healthy raising your own chickens and having your own eggs in your yard can be. I looked through the Placer County ordinances on what animals I could and could not have. And the way I read it, and to me reading the ordinance can be at times like reading a tax code. You could have 3 different people read it and get 3 different interpretations of what's going on. So I ended up with 3 hens. They've been very good for me. I've been getting eggs from them. They take care of all my greenways for my kitchen, as well as my neighbors bring theirs over as well. And anyway, apparently somebody doesn't want me to have chickens in my yard, so they complained to the code enforcement people, and they came out and said, no, the way you interpreted it is different than the way we interpret it. So what I'm asking from you guys is that you look at bringing that up as a discussion point. I'd actually like to see the ordinance changed to allow certain animals in residential areas, like hens and maybe even small animals such as a goat, which can reduce your fire hazard. I mean, I have a dog or a goat, the goat's going to eat all my brush around my yard, whereas the dog's not. So if I take a dog as my standard, a goat's not as loud, a chicken's not as loud, and I'm allowed to have 4 dogs. I can have 4 German Shepherds or 4 St. Bernards, which are quite large, and dogs that have a lot of intrusive properties, whereas 3 hens really don't have those large intrusive properties. So I'm just asking that if you could agendize it for a discussion item in the future, I'd like to have that section of the ordinances looked at to see, can we change things in the future? I mean, there is a big movement. A lot of cities and towns are changing it. Even Roseville allows you to have 10 chickens in Roseville, which is part of Placer County, as you know. So that's what I'm asking today.
Well, at least we ought to determine what is the correct interpretation, so
yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
All right, thank you for your time.
Good morning, Ellie Waller, 267 Laurel Drive, Tahoe Vista. I'd like to thank the county for Laurel Drive's erosion control project. Everybody should come see it. It's a beautiful example of pervious concrete. I'm here today not as a postal worker, but I do work for the U.S. Postal Service. There's a potential conflict with the census. Last week we had a census employee come to the local post office and ask us where the dividing lines are for the zip codes. We, as the Postal Service, shouldn't be doing that. There's been changes over the years, and what's happened is, I'll use Kingswood as an example, the way the properties have been deeded, some are Kings Beach 96143, some are Tahoe Vista 96148. Same thing happens behind the Broadway Golf Course. So I'm asking that county provide some staff to look into this and making the decisions on what those dividing lines are, and possibly at this time correcting where the signage is for Tahoe Vista and Kings Beach, because it is kind of misleading where one of the signs is located. My second issue is you recently discussed a housing element and potential density increase, and I'm sorry I couldn't attend yesterday. But on the agenda, supposedly Jennifer Merchant did an update on the TRPA's regional plan that potentially will be coming out in 2010. And there would be need of clarification what will take precedent, the Placer County housing element densities or the TRPA codes as they exist today in the community plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I might, for the board's information, we are coordinating with the Census Office, and any inquiry should be directed to the Planning Department. They're kind of our lead agency for coordination. Steve Wellner or whoever else in the local office, and then they'll contact back through Auburn as necessary.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Cheryl Zuccaro. I live at 7701 Emerald Bay Road. I'm a public safety dispatcher in Placer County for Tahoe. As per the matrix study recommendations, our department has made the decision to close Tahoe Dispatch. Currently, there are 6 dispatchers in Tahoe whose years of service range from 7 years to 18 years. Our lives are in Tahoe. Transferring to Auburn to staff a consolidated center is simply not feasible. There is another option in the matrix study which I pray you will reconsider, to staff Tahoe with solo dispatchers. When our fire departments go to CAL FIRE, we can staff Tahoe 24/7 with the 6 dispatchers we have and maintain a high level of service and permanently decrease the dispatch allocation by 6 positions, which saves money. Lake Tahoe is a resort community which experiences a huge influx of population, which poses unique problems. Visitors don't know our area. They often get lost. When they call 911 on their cell phones, they can't tell us their location. We know our area and use our personal knowledge to quickly determine the caller's location and transfer them to the correct jurisdiction if appropriate. We now receive wireless 911 calls from a vast area which has significantly increased our call volume. This increased call volume was ignored by the matrix study. The matrix study concluded there was not enough workload in Tahoe for even one dispatcher. However, their model for determining workload was flawed. It was designed to study agencies with stable populations and consistent call volumes. Their model does not work for a resort community with a fluctuating population. Matrix somehow found the need for 0 dispatchers in Tahoe. Perhaps they should visit us in summer. Closing Tahoe Dispatch will not only impact the basin, it will adversely affect every district in Placer County, since it will adversely affect the dispatch center who serves them. Let's be clear, I am in no way denigrating my colleagues in Auburn. They're excellent dispatchers working under the duress of severe staffing shortages and excessive overtime. How long will it take to fill Auburn's vacancies, which will be exacerbated by the loss of 6 experienced Tahoe dispatchers? And what happens in the interim? The justification has been made that in other agencies, 911 calls may ring many times before they're answered, and 911 callers may be placed on hold. That doesn't happen in Placer County now. However, if Tahoe Dispatch is indeed closed and our workload is imposed on the overburdened dispatch center in Auburn, then 911 will ring and ring and ring for everyone, for the whole county. Please reconsider the alternative. Staffing Tahoe with solo dispatchers will maintain a high level of service for everyone in Placer County and save money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chris Hennessy, and I live at 8863 Minnow Avenue in Kings Beach. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you this morning. There's much talk of redevelopment and improvement in Kings Beach, and that is very good news. We as a community welcome it and look forward to it. And thank you for coming out yesterday and, celebrating our new sign. Just seems like you had a lot of fun, per the newspaper. So I have been laying fairly low for the last 3 years, but I am a longtime volunteer in Kings Beach and an advocate for beautification and redevelopment of our town. I would like to bring to your attention some challenges that are resurfacing in our community that had dissipated a bit. After a few years of rest, we are again seeing a large amount of graffiti on our streets and properties, including homes for sale, on walls and fences of homes for sale in our county. This is not due to springtime or weather changing. It resurfaced during winter and it's still going strong. We are also seeing what I like to call large trash dumping on our streets again. Per our own county staff last year, their process, if any, for addressing particularly the large trash is very slow and cumbersome. I have compiled a list, which I'll leave with you, of some of the hot spots and serious challenges, as well as some recommendations and ideas that I've come across in my 10 years of collaborating with county officials on these issues. I'm doing this in the hope that you'll have an opportunity to communicate with the local environmental health office and sheriff's department, and just to see if they have any assistance that they might need or a different way of doing work, just to revisit processes. Some of us paint over graffiti and clean up as we walk, but we need ordinances and enforcement of them for the beautification to be self-sustaining. As you will see from the said list, these challenges directly and naturally address issues that you are currently considering. First, the location of the county government center, as the areas listed are in the exact location being considered for this in Kings Beach and within its proximity. It is clear to many of us that this location would be a wise and healthy choice for the government center and for the town, so I shamelessly ask you to choose Kings Beach. The second is redevelopment as a whole. We are hopeful that projects and prospective developers will be assisted in a quick and respectful manner so innovative and enhancing projects can move forward. Kings Beach needs your support and care to become all that it can be and to produce the type of revenues that will help Placer County achieve your goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right there, yes. Are there any other comments? If anybody else is going to speak on the beautiful, this spot for the government center, please hold those comments because that's actually an agenda item. But anything else that's not on the agenda we want to hear about?
Aye, aye.
Please.
My name is Dana Merrill Spencer Leonard. I am an average citizen living at 4075 High Street, and we also own 2 other properties in the North Lake Tahoe area. I'm just your average Jane, cranky husband, elderly parent, and I'm very concerned about this decision to close the dispatch center. I believe our area is so unique and so we have an influx of tourists, we have slippery roads, we have crazy storms, we have so many unique conditions, backcountry skiing. And I know the dispatch center handles all this, and we have been very, very blessed to have them and lucky to have them. And I hope you can reconsider the decision you have made to keep us as citizens of North Lake Tahoe safe and our properties safe. Our health, I think, is going to be endangered. Our parents, our family members, the response time, I feel, will be slower. I think confusion will arise with descriptions of these many streets that really aren't there. On paper, they look like they're there. I think the dispatchers and the officers up here are so very well versed in what they do and keep it together that they have kept us safe. And after so many years, I cannot comprehend why this decision was made, other than an $80 or $80,000 survey from a company who is not familiar with the area, and I don't believe they spent enough time looking at this issue. I will feel safe if they stay. My mother, I believe, will be safe at 80 years old up here if they stay, but I think we will be endangered if they really are closed down. How long have they been here? Do you guys know? I don't know. 40 years, 50 years? Anyone know? Please reconsider and keep that dispatch center open for the tourists' safety, which I know are a big concern for the board. Tourists don't know anything about the area. Half of them are so confused, and I know they get help when they talk to people who know the area. I would urge you very much for all of us citizens happily paying our taxes and hoping to keep the same benefits we've always had. And we've always paid our taxes. It made me so mad the other day when I read that thing. I called my husband. I said, "Don't pay the taxes!" But, he did. Darn it. Please reconsider this decision and talk to your community, because I don't think we were well enough informed about it. All of a sudden it was like, whoa, no dispatch center, it's going to endanger everybody. So maybe you could think about reconsidering that. And I do appreciate your time. Thank you very much. They're very, very valuable, a very, very valuable asset to our community. Public safety justice for all, as we saluted the flag. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Doyle, and I live at 13376 Northwoods Boulevard in Truckee. I'm very concerned about the dispatch situation. I was told that it was because you wanted to save money. That's why the decision was made. And I'm worried about if the dispatch center is in Auburn, and we have a problem up here, if they're sent to the wrong address, the first responders, or they're late getting there, arriving where they're supposed to be, there's a problem that they could be sued, and then you're really in trouble as far as financial goes. I have a vested interest in this because my husband, Bill Doyle, was a Placer County deputy sheriff, and he was shot 5 times while he was on duty. He, in the stress of the moment, he gave the wrong address as he was laying on the ground. He said he was in Commons Beach. And because of our brilliant dispatchers, they knew exactly where he was. They knew who he had been with 5 minutes before, and they were able to arrive there just within minutes, which saved his life. We didn't know if he was going to make it through all the surgeries, et cetera, but we know for a fact he wouldn't have made it if there hadn't been a rapid response. Having the dispatch center in Auburn could be very, very confusing for those dispatchers because they don't know all the tricky little streets. They don't know the area like our dispatchers do. The other thing is when you live in an area, like if the dispatchers, if there's no longer a dispatch center up here, then all the dispatching obviously will come from Auburn. And have you thought about what that'll do to the community? When people live in a community, they give to that community. Their children play with the children of dispatchers, they go to school with them, the families give back to the community. They're living in Auburn. Who are they going to be giving their service to? Auburn, that's where they live. So we won't have that that camaraderie that we have with our dispatch center here and all that they give to the community. I'm very worried about this. I'm very concerned because my husband wouldn't be alive today if it hadn't been for those dispatchers. Thank you. Please reconsider.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning. My name is Sally Barna. I'm a recently retired deputy sheriff for Placer County. I work for the sheriff's office in Auburn and in the inn in Tahoe. I'm here today to show my support for the Tahoe dispatchers and to ask the board to please reverse your decision to close the dispatch center in Tahoe. It is vital to the overall safety of the citizens and the deputies to keep dispatch services local. It is easy to see the problems and dangers that having the local calls dispatched from 80 miles away can create. The comment has been made that technology will make this plan work efficiently. Technology makes things work efficiently as long as the technology itself is working efficiently. Who can honestly say that they have never had a computer crash on them or their high-tech communicators malfunction or speakers not turn on when they're speaking? What is a local citizen to do when they can't get through to the Auburn Dispatch Center 80 miles away because efficient technology is temporarily out of service? Our dispatchers, Tahoe dispatchers, have always figured out a way to get help to these people through resources that only work because of the close proximity of the dispatchers to the deputies. These local citizens trusted your judgment enough to elect you. They need to know that they are just as important as the people down in the flatlands. They pay the same taxes. They need to know that while they are not getting a new justice center or whatever else has been shelved because of the budget, they will not be losing, to quote you, Mr. Chairman, a tool to keep them safer. They need to know that their safety as well and well-being is as important to you as that new helicopter. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Zuccaro. I'm Cheryl Zuccaro's husband. I also live at 7701 Highway 89. That's in Meeks Bay, California. I also wish to speak or address you on that same issue of closing the dispatch center at Lake Tahoe. My comment or my question for the board is that the plan obviously will save money, but it will result in 6 experienced dispatchers no longer working for Placer County, probably, or the county will lose at least some number of those dispatchers. My question to the board is that worth it? Is the savings of money worth losing those experienced people? Is that the wisest way to save money? It seems to me, I'm an outsider, I don't know that much about this. It seems to me that the dispatch department of the sheriff's department may not be well administered. The evidence to me is that even though that's a very small part of the sheriff's department, the sheriff's department administration needed to hire an outside consultant to tell them what to do with 20 people and 2 dispatch centers. So my comment or my suggestion to the board is that the board direct the sheriff's department to hire, either promote or hire from outside, a capable administrator to administer the dispatch department of the sheriff's department and let that person with some exposure and some experience on the job decide how best to consolidate, or if in fact to consolidate, the dispatch center and how to best proceed. It seems to me taking these actions might just result in a damaged resource having a less functional dispatch department, but still not having any capable administration of it. So that's my suggestion. I hope you consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close public comment and move on to supervisor committee reports. And Jennifer?
Thank you. Obviously, the dispatch center issue is of enormous importance to the local area. And I would like to make a clarification. The Sierra Sun actually erroneously reported that we, as the Board of Supervisors, had voted to consolidate all dispatch in Auburn, ceasing dispatch operations on the North Shore. What we actually did on March 24th at our Board of Supervisors meeting was we accepted the dispatch study, which included, but was not limited to, the option of consolidating dispatch. As Cheryl pointed out, there was an additional option in there that was part of that study that we accepted, which would allow for dispatch to continue with 1 solo dispatcher per shift. So that option, from my perspective, and I'm guessing the rest of the board shares this, is still available to us. Among other things, we also directed the sheriff's office to come up with an implementation plan as part of the March 24th acceptance of the study, and then to come back to us as a board to decide where to go from there. So it is certainly a possibility that it is the sheriff department intent to close the dispatch center up here. I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to lead you astray. But it is one of at least 2 options that were presented to the board that we did accept as our dispatch study. I have asked the sheriff, because I was pretty shocked, frankly, that the way the public heard about this the first time was through an article in the Sierra Sun. I've asked the sheriff's office to come back, address the max. Steve Caston, my district aide, is in the process of trying to set up those specific times, which we will make available and known to the public. Further, I've asked the sheriff to come back to the Board of Supervisors meeting in July and bring forward both probably the matrix report, the consultant, and to what their reasoning was, and also just, make clear the issues that do exist with the dispatch center currently. Currently, at least a third of the shifts are already covered by Auburn. The fire departments, the local fire departments will be leaving in May, so those calls will be redirected to the CAL Fire Station. So there are issues above and beyond fiscal that were part of this study. I have also asked the sheriff, as part of whatever implementation plan they come up with and bring back to us as a board, to make sure we have public input, because on March 24th, that was one of my questions to the consultant. Where was the public input on this? Why wasn't the public's voice heard? And it wasn't. The consultant admitted that flat out and said the appropriate time for public input would be when they came back with an implementation plan. So as part of the group that would look at implementing whatever decision the sheriff's office decides to move forward with. Additionally, I would like to make clear that while we as a board did adopt the dispatch study itself, because of the nature of the sheriff's department, he's an elected official, much like we are. His budget, his staff, and his buildings are essentially his to do with what he wants. That's the way we chose to set up our county. We do have input on a board level. I think the board heard your comments, heard the concerns both today and yesterday. I'm hoping to be able to talk with one member so as not to have any issues with the Brown Act. But I think your concerns are legitimate, and I think that there is a process that the public will be involved in, and that this is not a done deal, that we do have some options. They are limited options, but I'm going to want your input as the public, which means some of you are going to need to be able to step up and actually help us with coming up with a plan for whatever it is that we decide to do locally with the dispatch center. And I will be publishing an article, an op-ed in the Sierra Sun. I'm hoping it will be in there on Friday, but if not this week, it'll be in there next week. And please contact me. Make your voices heard. Contact the sheriff. Make your voices heard to him and his staff as well, because this is a public safety issue. But there are aspects and elements that, unfortunately, the Sierra Sun article did not cover well or at all. So just please help me and help the sheriff's office to continue working forward to come to a good resolution that will work for everyone up here. So I don't actually have a supervisor's report, sorry.
Thank you. Jim? Robert? Kurt? I don't either. So we'll move on to this consent calendar.
Second.
Roll call. Is there anybody in the audience that, there are any items on the consent calendar that you want to have discussed? Seeing none, roll call.
Miller?
Aye.
Weigand? Holmes?
Yes.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Buckner?
Yes. Okay, we'll now move on to our first timed item, the Public Works Parking Restriction, Tahoe City Transit Center. Mr. Kratz.
Good morning, Supervisor Rocky, members of the board. Peter Kratz, Public Works, for the record. As indicated in your package, this item relates to establishing parking restrictions associated with the planned Tahoe City Transit Center. And to do that, a public hearing must be held along with your board adopting a new ordinance that will amend Section 10.12.120 of the existing Placer County Code. As you will hear later today in a subsequent item, the Tahoe City Transit Center is imminent for construction this summer. We're very excited about that. As a reminder, the Tahoe City Transit Center is an intermodal facility for transit that will enhance the ability of commuters and visitors and use public transit services in the Tahoe area, that use transit services in the public Tahoe area. Similar to TRPA's remarks yesterday, it's good to point out we have support from TRPA and other agencies on this important project, and Joanne Marquetta indicated that we are a key leader in public transit for the North Tahoe area. Back to this item, a key part of the transit center is providing public parking, 130 spaces, to assist the public in the use of the transit system. On the slide that you see there, The proposed project is right in here. The parking lot is this, where are we at? Right here. We have existing parking for rafting patrons that sits right here at the 64-acre U.S. Forest Service parcel. And that's the crux of our project in establishing these parking restrictions. The proposed center and parking will be near the Truckee River and the popular access for rafting along in here. Parking already exists for rafting patrons, and the proposed ordinance is to make sure the transit center spaces are not used by rafting patrons. And this will be established through signage at the entrance to the transit center and at the parking lot itself. In that vein, in the environmental impact report for the transit center certified by your board on January 24, 2006, identified a mitigation measure number 8.1 to pass such a parking restriction ordinance. The goal of the ordinance is to have the new spaces be reserved for all uses by the public except for parking of vehicles for the purposes of rafting. So with that, I request a public hearing be held, and then assuming positive results of that hearing, I recommend your board adopt the parking restriction ordinance for the proposed transit center. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Have any questions? Kurt?
Two quick questions. First of all, just for clarification, you're not proposing the existing parking goes away?
That's correct.
Okay. And then secondly, you say that it will be signed to indicate that it is for parking for purposes other than rafting.
It'll actually be signed no rafting parking anytime
On the proposed
on the
project.
proposed lot.
Okay.
And it will also be indicate no parking from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. for everybody.
Okay.
Year round.
Right. I guess the giant question mark over my head is enforcement. When you
Right.
drive in and you see a car parked there, how do you know if its occupants are in somebody else's car or rafting? You're really
Right.
not going to know.
I think it's going to be a little bit of a new one for us in trying to track that the best we can. We know that the hot times of the year, July 4th, that's where we're going to see the hardest hits. We know that this parking lot gets overused during July 4th, and we see the Forest Service documents parking all over the place. So it'll be new for us in terms of tracking. I think it's going to be down to seeing somebody pulling up with rafting gear to really nail them versus trying to do research after the fact. But we'll have to feel this one out. We know, again, the hardest hit times will be during those summer periods.
And if experience shows us that the proposed project's available parking is underutilized for its intended purpose, would we be considering at that point making it available for recreational parking for rafting?
It would be something we'd need to go to the landowner, the Forest Service, to have to consider that. My feeling is that no, that would be a kind of an arduous process to get the landowner to recognize opening it up. My sense is this 130 space parking lot is going to be used. It's not going to be limited to people just getting on the bus. People can go there to get on their bikes and get on the bike trail. They can park there, in my mind, and walk to Tahoe City. It's open really for all uses outside of rafting parking, the way I interpret what we're trying to do here today.
Okay.
So.
And then I guess my final question is, any additional signage to let the public know that the parking is available there?
I think what you'll hear later today in another item is a part of our Tahoe City Transit Center project is some wayfinding signage for the center itself. So you'll hear a little bit more about that.
Great. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks.
Anybody else? Jennifer?
Just as a clarification, Peter, so it will be open for bicyclists, rollerbladers, hikers, wildflower viewers, transit center users,
Correct.
birders, just not rafters.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? All right, I will open up thank you.
Okay.
I'll open up your public hearing and see if anybody here wants to comment on this item. Must not be any rafters here today. All right, I will close your public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Peter. I think you're on the right track. I think to find the balance of keeping the rafters, respecting them, but yet, telling them they need to park in certain areas to keep this open, to encourage more more other types of transportation, so thank you. All right, next item is item number 2, Public Works Tahoe Regional Transit Fare Modification. Mr. Garner.
Good morning. Will Garner, Placer County Public Works Department. And today we are proposing that you approve a fare increase for TART, Tahoe Area Regional Transit. And we're proposing an increase to the base cash fare from $1.50 to $1.75. In addition, we're replacing our multi-ride, our 20-ride and our 40-ride passes with 14-day and 30-day passes with comparable increases in the charge for those fares. The fares for seniors and disabled are by law half of what the regular cash fare are. A notable change that I want to explain on this fare modification is how we're going to handle transfers, or how we propose to handle transfers under this. What we're proposing to do is replace transfers, eliminate the issuance of free transfers, and replace it with a 24-hour pass. And basically, what it results in is the same cost for somebody taking a round trip on, say, from home to work and back if they take a transfer. What it does is it greatly simplifies the transaction when the person is getting on the bus and paying their fare and receiving a transfer. That only will happen once now instead of in both directions. And one big issue for us is boarding time and just the complexity of all the things that the driver is doing while especially in the winter or even in the summer when we have big loads at the peak commute times, just handling that all at once. So the elimination of transfers and the replacement with a 24-hour day pass is a part of a new part, and it would be part of this fare structure change. The last fare increase was 5 years ago, 2004. The purpose of this increase is not only just to stay in line with inflation up from the last 5 years and probably a couple years into the future, but also to help us compensate for our loss in our subsidy revenue. TART and most transit services are heavily subsidized. About 80% of the cost of operating the service comes from various transit funds that we have access to. The biggest such source is local transportation fund, which comes back to each county and then is spread out to each city and the county. And that's all based on sales tax. And as everybody knows, sales tax is down. The LTF is, last we checked in about February or March, was down about 16% over the last year and a half. And in addition to that, the only state funding source we had for ongoing operations, called the State Transit Assistance, which comes from the gas tax, it's cut in half this year and eliminated into the future. And that was about $150,000 a year for the TART operation. All in all, about 7.5% of operating funds that we get from the various sources are down that much. So, fare increases are typical. They should happen more often than 5 years, and we're back here doing that, asking for that today. We expect this increase conservatively to increase total fare revenue by about $53,000 in 09-10. And that includes a slight estimation of a slight drop in ridership because of the fare increase. The increase in fares requires a public hearing to adopt that, so I'll ask that you open a public hearing and hear from the public.
Any of the board members have questions or comments before I open up the hearing?
Could you tell me, what is LTF?
Sorry, it's the Local Transportation Fund.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking that. I thought the same thing. Okay, I'll open it up now, a public hearing, to hear from anybody. That please come forward and give us your name and your address for the record.
I'm Carolyn Pretzer, Tahoe Vista resident. I got here on TART. That's where I get everywhere. I understand the need for fare increases. I want to start my quick comment with, your drivers are wonderful. The weather, the traffic, the people, they do a great job. The gentleman who brought me here was, I don't know why we're having this ride today. Thank you. but I strongly object as a senior citizen to the elimination of my per-ride pass. During the winter, a 30-day pass won't help me. When I need to go to a doctor and it's a snowy day, they cancel the appointment. I would like to see you continue, not just I understand the elimination, and he just explained the transfer thing, because it's buying these passes and getting the fares paid in the fare box that slows up the routes. So I buy a 20 or a 40 ride pass at a time, then I have it, zip, zip, I'm out of there. And if it's by 30 days, I don't know how many to buy, I don't know what the weather's going to be like, I can't predict it. Also, as I talk to some others, frankly, in the thrift store, they would like to see property owners, property taxpayers, given some kind of a break, in that so many people, we know the North Star and the big resort, not just North Star, but we're here, big resorts buy the passes for their employees, wonderful. But we as property taxpayers are some ways subsidizing or making possible this system. So a ride pass versus a day pass, and some consideration possibly, that's a new thought, but thank you very much for TART, because it's provided my life to be here.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to make a comment? Yes. May we please have your name and your address for the record, please?
My name's Jared. I live in Carnegie Bay, I believe, Polk County. I was concerned about the transfer issue. I usually take a skateboard or my mountain bike with me wherever I go. Go one way to work because I have to get there at a certain time, then I can take a leisurely bike back. I'm trying to save money on the TART, you know. All summer I can't really, I'm not buying a car for a reason or anything else. But the $350 versus the $175, I think that's the difference. I'd rather just pay the one-way pass, and I usually have to take a transfer wherever I'm going, so I'd kind of be forced to buy the full fare. So that's my concern with the transfer.
Okay.
Can I ask Jared a question?
You betcha.
Jared, I'm sorry. When you say that you usually just ride one way, do you have to transfer on that trip? Is
Normally,
that
if
what
I'm
you're
going to
saying?
Tahoma, usually first thing in the morning when I go to work, I have to take a bus that's usually just going to Tahoe City to Truckee, and I have to transfer over to get into down to Tahoma. Or I've been working at Squaw lately, and normally the bus I take in the morning takes me to Tahoe City, and then I got to catch another bus to get up Old County, and that involves a transfer each time. So I'd be buying a day fare where I'd only really be going one way anyways. I'm only trying to get back home.
So you'd be paying the $175 then?
I'd rather pay the $175, but with the transfer, according to this plan, the way it sounded to me, I'd have to buy a full day fare at $350, I believe. And I'd rather spend the $175. That's my issue with the transfer. If I was riding all day, I'd understand it. It made perfectly good sense. But trying to get it two ways maybe would make good sense. But if I'm only going one way, like I do travel.
And did you take transit to come here today?
I did not today. It didn't work out in my schedule. I was able to borrow my girlfriend's car. She had one. Most of the time, I try not to keep burdening her. I just take the bus. It's really easy.
I was waiting to hear if you rode your skateboard here.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other comments? All right, I'll close public comment, and maybe, Will, if you could, maybe address a couple of the comments?
I think we can address both. First, let me start with the transfer. What we're replacing it with is a 24-hour pass. So most passengers, and not, there's going to be some cases where this just does not work, but in most passengers, even if they're taking a one-way trip, will the next day at the same time take that trip again. And so this 24-hour pass will allow them to pay the $350 and get two trips out of it. If you're somebody who takes it one time or infrequently, you're probably going to have to pay the cash fare. Transfers make up about 12% of our boardings. So the rest of the percentage is just somebody getting on and with a pass, like a 10-ride or a 20-day pass or a 30-day pass, and just boarding that way. On the issue of the multi-ride passes, I didn't mention this in my presentation, I should have. We are still keeping a 10-ride pass. And that's to have some flexibility for those who maybe over a 40-day period, don't ride as much as a 30-day pass would give them the value. So, and actually now when we're selling a 20-ride pass, the fare box is spitting out 2 10-ride passes. So really, we're keeping that alive, the 10-ride, and it's $14 for that, so it's $1.40 per ride, and so that's there for the people who want to have the per-ride option. So it's definitely an increase in cost for the passenger, but there are lots of different options for people if they ride once, frequently, or occasionally.
If I could ask, how will that specifically address the lady on the senior citizen?
It's a $7. Hers, if she's senior citizen or disabled, it would be $7.
That would be able to handle her doctor trips if she needed, instead of the 30 days, she could buy the 10-day? Okay.
Yes. Or 2 10-days, or however many. Yeah.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, and would the 10-ride pass address the concern the young man had? I mean, is that a way for him to go?
It could also do that as well, although if you're transferring, you're going to use 2 of those 10 rides on the transfer. I'm thinking that in most cases that buying a day pass, and this is what it looks like, you hold on to it for the next day, and we're gonna make it so it's available for if you buy the pass in the afternoon and you're a two-way traveler, you'll be able to use it for your morning commute.
Okay. Any other questions?
If I might,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, just to raise the issue of the property taxes, now the transit system receives no property tax
That's
dollars.
correct.
Right. And just for the edification of the public at large, is that the property taxes that the county collects, roughly countywide, we retain 18% of those dollars. Those dollars we pay for the assessment process, we pay for the treasurer, we pay for the auditor to cut the checks back to the state of California and transfer to the special districts who get the rest of the money beyond the 18%. The vast majority of that money is collected by the state of California for school purposes. They then redistribute that statewide based upon a formulaic process on a number of students. So the resorts pay property taxes, homeowners pay property taxes, commercial building, everybody pays property taxes. We just have the sheer joy of being the collection agent essentially for the state of California, who keeps the majority of the monies.
They continue to have their hand in our pocket.
Always.
Thank you, Will. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt the Tahoe Area Regional Transit fare modification as reflected on page 8 of our board packet, attachment A.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Now we will adjourn as the Placer County Board of Supervisors and convene as the Placer County Redevelopment Agency, and we'll hear item number 3 on redevelopment, and that'll be Mr. Caldwell and Mr. LeBeau. Good morning.
Good morning, Supervisors. We'd like to show you a progress report according to state law relative to the North Tahoe project area. We have to do a plan every 5 years. You adopted that plan about 3 years ago. According to state law, we have to give a public progress report, seek any feedback from your board and also the public, and then that you would accept the report at the end of the presentation. Today, we're not going to be asking for any dollars for any new projects or anything additional that you haven't seen before. Again, it's just a progress report. So with that, we'd like to go through this with you. As you saw yesterday, a major aspect of the redevelopment agency is to remove blight. We were in Kings Beach. You saw the Gateway Center, the several different buildings that had been purchased through your redevelopment agency. Dilapidated buildings had been removed, pollution, rectified pollution that was going into the lake. Currently, those properties are being cleared, and we'll be working with the community to come up with ideas of how to redevelop that property. I'd like to thank your board for coming up yesterday, especially Supervisor Wygant, who almost donated his thumb to the ribbon cutting process. And we will.
He shed blood for us.
We are going to practice that ribbon cutting in the future before we bring those big scissors out. Be careful with scissors. So we have the blight, and then the three major issues that the redevelopment agency goes after on your behalf are the infrastructure improvements where there's deficiencies or any place we could work with others to make improvements. We look to support the businesses wherever we can through a variety of sources, and then also to increase affordable housing supply. As you're aware, in North Tahoe, there's three non-contiguous areas. There's the Kings Beach, Tahoe Vista area, there's Tahoe City, and Tahoe City Gateway. As I mentioned before, we're about halfway through this most current implementation plan. The implementation plan you approved in 2004 outlined a series of actions that the board wished to undertake with your approval. So we're going to go through that today, perhaps. Greg, I'm not getting slides going. Thank you, Greg. Again, and also we're doing this report based on the state law. The budget, redevelopment agencies, we said at the very beginning, they start first few years with a very small amount of money. And it's basically an investment firm. Your board allows us to make investment decisions, hopefully that are wise. It has a return on that investment, and it spurs private investment. Also allows us to reach a level where we're able to support the issuance of a bond. That has worked. We've done this about 10 years now. We started off with less than $400,000, right around $400,000. This year we're at $23 million being invested into these in this area. And most of that comes from a bond that we issued a couple years ago. We'll start with Tahoe City, the first project that the redevelopment agency assisted in, and I want to make this clear that we assisted right at the end when all the rest of the money and the many, many years of work by the county staff and the community of raising money, Public Works Department, beautification committees had raised a tremendous amount of money. Right at the end, the redevelopment agency had just been founded. We put in $700,000 to help with some of the amenities that otherwise there was not cash for. But again, you've seen already what that has done, those sidewalks to Tahoe City and the Tahoe City economy. In the last few years, we've been working very closely with the Tahoe City PUD, who provides leadership on several local projects, as well as the Resort Association, who is a funding partner on several of these projects, to further increase the beautification of the environment there. Commons Beach, you recognize the tremendous gains that have been made there. We put in $250,000. Heritage Plaza, that was a couple years ago, $15,000. We work with the PUDs on the bike trail, the Resort Association, Tahoe Conservancy, over $300,000 there. We're currently working on a bid to build two Tahoe City gateway signs that were designed principally through input from the community. When we did studies initially with the business community about what the biggest issue was as far as maintaining a healthy, robust business environment, they said we need more parking, local parking, so that people could get out of their cars and come to their businesses. So one of the first things we did was build the Jack Pine public parking lot in Tahoe City. Tahoe City Transit Center, you just heard Peter discuss that. We're putting a $500,000 contribution. Our contribution is really aimed towards increased parking. And we will stand at this point ready to donate more to this project if, in fact, they need it to complete it. Tahoe Y, we listened very closely to the Tahoe City Downtown Association. It's a Main Street program that we've invested in. They want to focus their efforts on improving the Y, doing a beautification project there. We've put in a $200,000 contribution. We'll be working with the Resort Association and perhaps others. And yes, you could put your hat, you could show that.
Main Street Tahoe.
Main Street Tahoe hat right there. So again, very closely working with the community on that process. Your board funds, to a large part, the Tahoe City Downtown Association, Main Street. There are certain goals that this group has, as well as the one in Kings Beach we'll discuss: economic redevelopment, beautification, marketing. And we also funded a PBID study, Property-Based Improvement District. It's actually the second one we funded. The current economy is such that it may not to be able to bring to fruition. However, we're going to continue to work with them because there are certain elements that the business community recognizes when the economy is right. They would be much benefited to have this kind of a business district in place. So let's turn to Kings Beach now. Kings Beach, Tahoe Vista. We saw the Swiss Mart site yesterday. It's been cleaned up. This was part of the process to clean that up. We are I believe, the biggest investor in the Kings Beach Commercial Core Improvement Project. Your redevelopment agency has been allocated by your board to put in $11 million. And the area that we are mostly focusing on at this point is the building of parking lots that are required by the EIR in order to have the process go forward. We've already built the Minnow Avenue parking lot. You dedicated that last year. We've purchased the Rainbow property for a parking lot. We're working with Public Works, and they will be building that for us in the next year or so. You saw yesterday the Kings Beach Eastern Gateway. We've invested several $1 million in buying a series of dilapidated properties that we are going to turn into a mixed use, most likely commercial, some housing in there, maybe some parking. But we are going to heavily invest in working with the community to come up with ideas on the commercial side. What would be the best aspect? How should that gateway best look? We've already hired a design consultant to do some preliminary ideas for us that we could present to the community. Then we'll take that community feedback. Then as time goes on, we'll prepare a request for proposal and try to get developer to come in and build something that would, again, really develop a jewel as you enter into Kings Beach in California and Placer County. Some of the things we've done there, again, that's a Swiss Mart site, dilapidated service station. Purchased that, $520,000. It's been cleaned. We've been working on cleaning the property for about the last 3 years as far as the pollutants. We're just about getting that signed off.
Hey, there's a monument.
There's a sign that you dedicated yesterday. And again, that is more a symbol of what is to come. It's a beautiful sign, but it's more important as to what is going to be behind it in the next 5 to 7 years. This was across the street. Again, that was a kind of an old, abandoned, dilapidated garage. Over to the right, which you don't see, was an abandoned, dilapidated service station that was also putting pollutants headed towards the lake. We also cleaned that up. This was some of these old tourist cabins that had been turned into housing. They're really not built for year-round housing, very dilapidated. We bought this site and the site across the street as well. The intent is to work with Domus, affordable home builders. We've purchased other properties. They are going to build new affordable housing in the close neighborhood. When that new affordable housing is done, we're going to allow these folks to move over to the new affordable housing. We'll take these buildings out, and then we'll build, again, another phase of Domus, new affordable housing. You heard a little bit yesterday from Jennifer Merchant about the 5 CEPs, which are community enhancement projects, which are rolling through the system. There are actually 6. Homewood is not in the redevelopment agency, so we're only focusing on the 5 today. Brown BB LLC, I'll show you a picture of that in a moment. They are still moving ahead full speed. Domus moving ahead full speed on the affordable housing. Ferrari Family Investments, North Tahoe Properties. They are still moving, although not as perhaps everyone had hoped. There still needs to be some land assemblage. There are a couple competing KB Resorts and Ferrari pretty much tie up the waterfront all the way to the conference center, the TRPA board, the redevelopment agency, and actually I think the participants all realize that if we could, if they could come to an agreement to work together and have one site and one project, it'd be a much better project for the community, more flexibility with how to use the site. So that's still being worked on, still trying to have those parties work together as best we can. Pastore Ryan is also still taking a look. They haven't actually put an application yet. Brown Community Enhancement Project, this is their streetscape. This is some of the buildings that would be replaced from North Tahoe Partners, a Ferrari Crown Motel, very nice. The motel is a nice motel, but the property and the potential that it has with the beach access, it could actually be stunning if redone, and I think that's what the Ferrari family has understood and why they put so much effort and energy into this project. There's also some pipeline projects that we're working on. I mentioned earlier that we worked very closely over the years with the Tahoe City PUD. We are now working much more closely with Curtis Aaron and the North Tahoe PUD. We are working with them on a Tahoe Vista public parking. They're building a parking lot over there. They're short of funds. We believe that there would be benefit to the community if the redevelopment agency invested in that, so we're doing our early exploration, and we'll come back to your board later on that. We have the Stoker property redevelopment in heart of Kings Beach, which actually might be a site that would be beneficial to the Kings Beach Core Improvement Project. Redevelopment agencies looked at that property before. We are now in discussions with the North Tahoe PUD about it. And then finally, you may remember that there was, a few years ago, there was a sewer spill in Kings Beach, where, based on, who knows why, back in the day, somebody put sewer line essentially right along the water, and somebody hit it. So the North Tahoe PUD is working very diligently to try to figure out how to get that sewer line out, move it. We're working with them. One of the things that they need is a site for a sewer lift station. As I mentioned, the redevelopment agency has purchased several sites for parking lots and other commercial development that might be beneficial to them to use at least part of one of those sites to help them do their lift station. So again, we have, I would say, a new era of cooperation with Curtis Aaron and his board at the North Tahoe PUD. I mentioned the Business Association, Tahoe City Business Association, $65,000, put on a tremendous amount of community projects and are working very hard on the core improvement project and trying to make that happen. Final area, affordable housing. Domus, I mentioned to you, we have this developer in there. We've already purchased over $4 million worth of properties that they are planning to build new affordable housing, scattered site affordable housing, much more agreeable to the community. Last year, the redevelopment agency staff, working with Domus, achieved a $3.3 million grant from the state to help with that project, and we're also looking for other state and federal money to assist. And there's other sites that we've purchased along the way as well. In addition, we still have ongoing discussions on a Tahoe Vista affordable housing site with the Moralatas family. We provide technical assistance where appropriate. We've rehabilitated 42 single-family homes. And again, we always love to use someone else's money. We recently received an $800,000 home grant for first-time home buyers and rehabilitation, which will be used partially in this community. With that, I'll put up this sign that one day just magically appeared from the North Tahoe Business Association, and we appreciate the support for them to put that sign up, and we appreciate the efforts that they're making. Particularly, we appreciate the support the board has given us. And so if you have any comments on how we should be doing our business differently, we'd love to hear that, and we'd also love to hear what the community might have to say.
Does the board have any questions? Okay.
Rich, thank you very much for the report and the sort of the history and the future prospects as well. I'd like to focus a little bit on Tahoe Vista, if I could. I understand that we do have a parking lot as a proposal as part of this. And I understand that you are also in continuing discussions with the Moralatos family on some affordable housing there. It's my understanding, and as the new kid here still on the board, I'm going to say that forever, it's my understanding that there was at least a project in the past that redevelopment was working on in Tahoe Vista. I think it was also affordable housing. Can you address that a little bit and explain to us what happened there and why it went away, or did it go away?
I will say that I won't say that it went away, I'll say it has transformed. There was a project that the redevelopment agency worked with the Moralatas family, with WATT, which was the affordable housing group in this area, and had several public meetings, several public discussions, trying to bring forward an affordable housing project that the family and many members of the community supported. There was, however, in any affordable housing project, opposition, particularly from the neighbors. And so a group was formed to, in a sense, represent their interest as well. At some point, it became untenable for the developer. They weren't. I think at the time the project was too big. I advised the developer that project was too big. Why don't you put a project that is more fit more into the character of the community? The developer wanted to persist, and at some point, the amount of subsidy that they would need, as well as the some of the community elements that they were facing that were fighting them, they pulled out. In the meantime, Moralatis family made significant notes of what the community had said and has come back with another project that pretty well mirrors what the opponents of the project had said at the time. Well, if you just did this, this, and this, we wouldn't have a problem. We would support it. So what's coming forth, or what's being discussed, is a project that would be very similar to what the opposition to the original project said they would support. So I'm just kind of, quite frankly, curious to see how that really works, so that we are willing, as a redevelopment agency, to help support that. But again, time will tell whether a project does come forward, and if it comes forward in a manner that was very similar to what had been asked for, if the opposition goes away, or if the family and developer decide to move forward despite any potential opposition.
Thank you, and I would, encourage the RDA to continue to work in the Tahoe Vista area. I know that there's a certain feeling of being the redheaded stepchild within the Tahoe Vista community, that, Tahoe City got this cool stuff and Kings Beach is getting this cool stuff. So I would encourage you to continue that focus on Tahoe Vista as well, and working with the community to bring forth some projects that are supported. Sounds like this one might be the one. Thank you.
Jim? All right, I will open it up now to the public for any public comment.
Waller, Tahoe Vista resident. Thank you, Jennifer. I would just like to ask Rich, as part of the parking lot project, could that be looked at as an expansion for the National Avenue corridor for sidewalks for the community as well as tourists, a better signage to get to the the North Tahoe Regional Park? There isn't great signage there, and if there was a sidewalk structure, I think it would make it a lot more accessible for people. Also, bus service could possibly then be increased to the park as part of that. And did the county recoup the $900,000 from the Affordable Housing Development Corporation that was the original developer for Cedar Grove, which is now Vista Village?
A couple comments on that. First of all, on the sidewalk project and what it may or may not be as far as a parking lot, this would be a project that is being run through the North Tahoe PUD. So I would refer any questions you would have to Curtis Aaron, his board, on that. What we would be doing as we proceed forward in our preliminary discussion with him is we would be a funding partner to help him pay for the project that they are currently looking at.
Why would the sidewalks be the PUD? Why wouldn't that be the redevelopment agency like a parking lot is?
Well, we're not currently looking at any sidewalks at this point. We're not to that stage. I don't know if the PUD would be looking at sidewalks or not. The only thing that he was looking at when we discussed would be a parking lot.
Okay.
So you'd have to defer those questions to him. And as far as the funds that the redevelopment agency paid to HDC as part of that, we recouped, I think, actually probably more in the long run than we had paid. But there was two things. First of all, we had developed an agreement where we were risk sharing. And the issue was that we could not find, after several years, developers that were willing to take the risk to develop in the TRPA environment. Number one, it's very difficult to develop in any kind of affordable housing in any environment because it's always near someone's neighborhood. So that's inherently difficult, but even more important is TRPA then puts a lot of restrictions and other regulations that have to be gone through. And since affordable housing by nature is a very low-margin business, we couldn't get anyone to come up. So we signed an agreement that we would risk share up to a certain amount. So the amount, whatever that amount was, I don't recall at this point, but again, when they pulled out, we did not recoup that part. However, after about a 2-year chasing of the, I shouldn't say that. After a 2-year discussion, negotiations, and attorneys and potential mediators, we ended up with an agreement with AHDC that resulted in the county picking up a very nice piece of property in the North Auburn area and also some cash back. So I would say that we recouped probably more than we originally invested.
Will you have a similar
Excuse me,
agreement?
Excuse me, direct your questions to me, and your time is up, so if you could just wrap it up, please.
Okay, will there be a similar agreement with the new developer of that? Thank you.
You want to answer that?
We're not to that stage at this point.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments?
My name is Randy Hill. I'm a Tahoe Vista resident. I came to listen today, but this last dialogue triggered something in me I wanted to respond to. I was part of that original group who worked at length with the Moralatas family, as others here are, in trying to find a solution to the affordable housing project. We weren't successful. However, since that time, Alex and his family have come back with a plan, and several of us have met with him individually, and I can speak personally for the record that based on what Alex has said, I will fully support that project in Tahoe Vista. And I'm not just a resident, that's in my backyard. So I want to clear up some of those misconceptions about Tahoe Vista as well. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Savory. I'm a Kings Beach resident, and I currently serve as board president of the North Tahoe Business Association. And I just wanted to express my sincere thanks for the investment you've made in both Kings Beach and Tahoe Vista, as they are our two redevelopment areas within our district, which goes from Crystal Bay to Carnelian Bay. We greatly appreciate your past support and continued support, and thank you for yesterday's ribbon cutting of our gateway sign. That was, as Jennifer had said, Supervisor Montgomery, an iconic event for our community. We're really excited about it. Already people are taking photos at that sign, and Kings Beach is getting out there. I welcome the opportunity, the community welcomes the opportunity to voice our ideas on what that gateway can look like in the future. And I don't need to remind anyone, but Kings Beach, named unanimously as part of the Pathways 2007 planning, which now looks like 2011 based on Joanne's presentation yesterday and Jennifer Merchant's. But we are unanimously within the basin identified as the most in need of redevelopment. And obviously you're making that investment, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coster, Kings Beach. Special thanks to the redevelopment agency for all the hard work. I just wanted to reach out and make a couple of recommendations. We all know that there's millions of or billions of dollars coming into the state of California, and was wondering how much we could possibly leverage our redevelopment activities. I also want to call attention to the board and redevelopment on the new AB 811 that was passed last summer through the Assembly. Several communities are using it. The city of Berkeley used it. It's a bonding mechanism where you can actually create a sustainability district. So conceivably, you could create a sustainability district for the North Shore. These are retrofits of homes or new homes. It's a bonding mechanism. You would issue bonds. The city of Berkeley raised about $1.8 million in 9 minutes. City of Palm Desert raised $27 million. And there's now a discussion going on with regards to a statewide kind of AB 811 between Southern and Northern California. And then also you could tie this into the county's climate action plan to meet AB 32. Some of the federal stimulus money that's out there that everyone knows about, there's $127 million in community block grants, $324 million in California's affordable housing, $400 million for competitive grants for energy efficiency, and another $15 million available for high-speed internet, all stuff that we could use in our community. So I thought, great opportunity for the redevelopment agency and county staff and the Board of Supervisors to work together for affordable housing and mixed-use projects. You guys own the parking lots. You could develop the airspace over the parking lots. Opportunity to create some green-collar jobs through Sierra College. And I noticed in your list you've got SEC restoration, water quality, erosion control projects, and retrofitting existing green buildings. Opportunity to create some new jobs here in our community and leverage all this money. I know a lot of it needs to be shovel ready, and some of it is still in the works. So those are my recommendations. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board. And this is just to accept the report.
Not just as public hearing to consider adoption of a resolution approving
Yeah.
the report.
Okay.
So there's a
If
resolution.
if there's no additional discussion at the board level, I'll move that we adopt a resolution approving the report on the progress of the North Lake Tahoe redevelopment project area implementation plan.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, now we will, thank you, Rich, that was a good job. Now we'll adjourn as the Pulaski County Redevelopment Agency Board and reconvene as the Pulaski County Board of Supervisors and take up item number 4, the Facility Services Garbage Collection Fee Adjustment Franchise Areas 2 and 3. Mr. Durfee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Durfee with Facility Services. I'm here today with a series of recommendations related to adjusting garbage collection fees in franchise areas 2 and 3. Franchise areas 2 and 3 cover the eastern portions of the county, essentially from the eastern boundaries of the city of Colfax to the Nevada state line, including the areas around the lake. I have 3 specific recommendations for you today. I'm recommending that you conduct a public hearing to receive input on proposed garbage collection fee adjustments in franchise areas 2 and 3, and that you also consider a new cardboard collection fee. Those fees are all shown in Exhibits A1 and A2 in your package, and I'd ask you not to turn there right now because they're long, complex tables. My second recommendation will be that you would, should you approve the fees, that you adopt a resolution authorizing the chairman to sign an amendment that incorporates the new fees. And finally, that you make a finding pursuant to Section 21080B8 of the Public Resources Code, finding that the collection fees are derived directly from the cost of providing service and that they are necessary to meet operating expenses required for the maintenance of service and are therefore exempt from environmental review. Now, it's not always a pleasure to be here in front of your board increasing fees, but I have to tell you that today I'm really proud of the work that my staff and the contractor did to mitigate what would have been, per the contract, fairly extensive fee increases. And just by way of a little bit of background, the cost of living adjustment section of this contract for operations, the adjustment date was last August, and if you'll all remember, diesel fuel last August was running about $5 a gallon. So the COLA that the contractor was entitled to receive was about 7.92%. We felt, both the contractor and facility services, we thought that that was not appropriate to try to pass on that type of a cost increase to our consumers. So we really went to the table to come up with a solution that really mitigated the majority portion of that contract, or of the COLA. Your board took an action a couple of weeks ago that was part of that. About 2 weeks ago, you reduced the franchise fee that we charge for these franchises from 5% to 4%, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but that action by your board was one of the major things that we did in order to help mitigate those increases. As it turns out, the overall fee adjustments that we will be recommending range, depending on the level of service that the customer subscribes to. These increases will range from 0.7% to about 2.7% rather than the 7.9% that the contractor was entitled to. So I really do want to thank my staff and the contractor for working on these. There's really 2 components to the fees that we need to talk about. There's the tipping fee that's charged at the Eastern Regional MRF. That's the fee that people are charged when they come in the gate. That particular fee, again, was entitled to go up by $3 per ton, or 7.92%, pursuant to the agreement. What staff has done is looked at our internal long-term financing plans. Part of the monies that we collect there come to the county to be used for long-term capital improvements, closure of the landfill, purchase of the facilities, the MRF itself, and other facilities that were constructed by contract by ERL Inc. And we are on track to be in good shape in terms of those reserves throughout the next 20 years or so of our financing plan. So we're recommending that we absorb that $3 increase in the tipping fee into the county's portion of the fee, and therefore not increase the tipping fee at all. That will have not only an effect at the gate, but it also affects the collection fees, because TTD has to pay that tipping fee when they bring garbage into the MRF to dispose of it. So by the county absorbing that increase, we're also passing on additional savings out to the customers out in the communities. The actual collection fees in franchise areas 2 and 3 go to 3 different portions of the work. A portion of the fee goes to the services that are provided, the actual transportation, collection, if you will, of the garbage. Again, that per agreement with TTD, they were entitled to a 7.92% COLA increase. In order to minimize the increases, TTD has come to the table, and they've agreed to cap that COLA for that portion of the fee at 5% rather than 7.92%, and then defer the remaining 2.92% until FY 10-11. And we will work next year to see how that blends in with the actual cost of living increases at that point in time. The second component of the fee is the disposal. Again, that's the tipping fee that they're charged at the ERL MRF. Since staff is not recommending that we change that tipping fee, there will be no increase to the disposal component of the fee. And then finally, the franchise fee, which I already talked about. Your board a couple of weeks ago adopted a reduction in that franchise fee. That reduction is passed through to all of the customers, and again helps mitigate that 7.92% increase. Tahoe Truckee Disposal also wishes to establish fees for commercial cardboard recycling bins. Historically, they've provided that service for free because the value of the cardboard was very high. Over the last year or so, the recycling markets have been very poor. All of our contractors, both on the east and west side, are dealing with reduced revenues because of that. And staff does recommend that we institute a fee for the collection of that cardboard, since it's no longer viable to do it for no charge. So commercial customers will be able to get a bin at a charge to recycle that particular material, should your board adopt that. The proposed fees, again, are shown in Exhibits A1, A2, and A3. There's extensive tables. There's literally hundreds of different services. As these fees relate to our collection customers, particularly our residential customers, the cost of single can service, which is our most common service up in these areas, would be proposed to increase from in Area 2 from $20.31. It would increase up to $20.87 per month, which is an increase of 56 cents. In Area 3, the increase would go from $17.72 up to $18.19. The reason for the disparity between those two areas is that the more dense Area 2 is more densely populated. The travel time between stops is much lower, so TTD is able to provide that service on a somewhat less expensive basis on a per unit basis. Notices specifying the date and location of this public hearing were sent out to all of the customers. They were also advertised pursuant to the appropriate regulations. Something new that we have to do this year is that we've actually collected protest letters. Proposition 218 requires that we collect protest ballots, if you will, or letters. Those were sent to the clerk of the board's office. I will ask at the end of the hearing, I'll ask that your board ask the clerk of the board to tabulate those for us. They've already done that work. I haven't seen them yet. So that we did that so that they're being held in a neutral office. They're not being held by my office, so that there's no no potential conflict. With that, I would be happy to try to answer any questions your board may have, and I would remind you that this is a public hearing. Ask you to conduct that public hearing and consider the recommendations.
Have any questions?
I have one clarifying question. On the cardboard fees, would business owners be able to take cardboard directly to the MRF if they didn't want to purchase a dumpster?
Yes, it's simply to offset the cost of collecting. Since the revenues from the cardboard no longer do that, it's essentially just a service cost to cover that. But they will still be able to drop off cardboard at the MRF.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Okay, no more questions. I will open up the public hearing. May we please have your name and your address for the record?
My name is Joanna Walters. I live and work in Truckee, and I also work all around the North Shore. My business is actually helping other businesses recycle and reduce their trash costs. Yesterday, I submitted a letter. I brought some extra copies here about some of the issues I found with the proposed fees for cardboard.
You could give those to the clerk, please.
Basically, I understand that the economics would require some type of fee for cardboard service. My issue is that with the implementation, there's still some things that aren't clear. One is, how would shared dumpsters be charged? There's many, many dumpsters around town for, this is just for the cardboard ones that are shared by multiple businesses. For example, in Tahoe City, Tahoe Dave's, Wolfdale's, and a couple of the other smaller businesses in the bike shop all share 2 different cardboard dumpsters, but each one doesn't use it equally, obviously, because of the type of businesses, and there's no stipulation about how those costs would be shared among multiple customers. The other thing is that for people that already have these dumpsters, there's not very many other options for them, and with the rates proposed, it would really be very punitive increase in their charges. I gave some examples in the letter, but especially on Donner Summit, it could be as high as a 77% rate increase starting July 1, or the lowest for the customers that I work with would be a 40% increase from their current costs. And these are people that are using the cardboard dumpsters now, trying to divert the recyclables from their waste stream and basically, do the right thing. And now if they continue to do that, it's going to be pretty punitive. If they don't, then they'll have to get trash service, which should be even more expensive. Some businesses don't have other options. For example, shared dumpsters, there's not room for each client to get their own dumpster. And the last point is that the availability of cardboard service has not been as it's shown on the rate sheet. For example, in Donner Summit area, there is not the option to get 2-time-a-week service for cardboard pickup right now. And one of the clients I have up there, they do have a couple of dumpsters, but because of the way the service goes, they're required to put all the cardboard in blue bags prior to putting it in that dumpster, because it's picked up on the same day as their trash with the same truck. So, yeah.
I'm sure facility services, but I want to clarify for the purposes of the protest hearing, you're neither a resident or personally pay any of the garbage rate fees, correct?
Well, it directly affects my entire business, and I have multiple clients who do personally pay this,
Okay.
and I'm here on their behalf.
Can you tell us how many of those clients are protesting?
All my clients are protesting, and there are 6 in Placer County area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Why didn't they show up then?
Good morning. My name's John Heitch. I live at 330 Kimberly Drive, Tahoe City. I have Tahoe Tree Company, and they took the, I just got back into town, the cardboard dumpster's gone. And we're willing to pay a little more for cardboard. I don't know what the rates are, but if it's less than the trash pickup, I just unloaded 24,000 seedlings yesterday, all in cardboard. Could almost fill a corner of this room. So I would like to have a cardboard dumpster, and if it's less than the regular dumpster fee, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Any other comment? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Do you want to maybe address at this time? Do we need to, do you want to?
You know, I think in terms of the multiple users issue, that's something we'll work with our contractors on to make sure that they're communicating with businesses and that they're working out solutions for that. The speaker was correct. There are no, there's no provision within that rate structure for multiple users. Typically, for multiple users of garbage bins, there's simply side agreements between those users, and I suspect that that's how this will get worked out. But Tahoe Truckee Disposal is very adept at working with their customers, and we'll make sure that we're facilitating those discussions.
Okay.
Would you give us a report back on that, please, Jim?
I will. I will. And I would remind your board that I'd like you to ask the clerk of the board to tabulate the protest, please.
At this point, if we could have the clerk report the protests.
The total protests for franchise area 2 and 3 is 34 protests.
And that includes presumably the representation by the speaker, although I'm not sure she has a basis for making those protests. But nevertheless, assuming that those are legally valid protests, that falls well below the 491 margin that is required, so the board can proceed to adopt the resolution.
Okay, including the 6.
Yes.
There's a total of 40 protests.
Thank you.
Bring it back to the board.
I would make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the chairman to sign the amendment that adjusts the rate fee, the franchise fees for areas, excuse me, the fee adjustments as well as franchise fees for areas 2 and 3, and that we incorporate the findings pursuant to section 21080B8.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Good job, Jim, laying that out. Okay, the next item is item number 5, Public Works Award of Federal Transportation Administration Funds. Mr. Garner again.
Hello, thank you, Will Garner, Public Works. This action is 2 actions requested. One is to conduct a public hearing, to take public comment and consider the Placer County's receipt of over $1.4 million of Federal Transit Administration funds from the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, the Economic Stimulus Act. And then secondly is to approve a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Works to apply for these funds and then execute the agreements to receive the funds. There are 3 different funds or applications for funds involved here, and we're already working on them because the act requires fast action on actually making the applications for the funds and then receiving the funds and then using the funds. So we're having to kind of work simultaneously to getting your approval here. The first one is $251,000 for preventive maintenance that we're going to apply for from the FTA 5311 non-urbanized program. And those funds will go to the mostly to the TART system for things like engine and facility maintenance activities that we normally wouldn't conduct that would help us reduce our operating costs over the next couple of years. Things that are well needed, though. And then there's just over $75,000 in a second application that will go towards the Tahoe City Transit Center, along with several other funding sources. And then third is $1.1 million from the urbanized portion of the federal transit funds, and that's for 2 Placer Commuter Express buses, which your board actually 2 weeks ago authorized us to move ahead on the purchase of those. And this would be the funding that would fall in place for the last 2 of those 5 buses. So all in all, today in this action is $1.4 million, or just over, that we're seeking your approval for. And this is not all of the federal transportation dollars under this act. This is just this particular amount of money through this application program process requires a public hearing. And so we're asking you to open a public hearing to consider comments on this.
Any questions from the board members? Seeing none, okay. I will open up the public hearing on this item. Anybody wishing to make a comment? I don't think anybody will object to us getting this money.
It's on the plan.
Yeah. I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
I move we approve the resolution authorizing the Director of Public Works to submit applications and execute agreements to receive $1.1 million in Federal Transit Administration funds and $326,786 in Federal Transit Administration funds under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Will. Now we'll move on to the department items. Item number 6. I was looking at this, Clark, and I was wondering, why are you doing road maintenance and IT?
It's because Jim Bogan, who's my purchasing manager, is in Arizona this week. So I'm up here in Tahoe this week, so that's why.
Okay.
Good morning, Chairman Rocco, members of the board. I'm Clark Moots, Director of Administrative Services. Item 6A is requesting your board's approval to award competitive bid number 9871 for concrete asphalt used for road maintenance to Vulcan Materials of Roseville and Grass Valley. Vulcan Materials was the only bidder and was also last year's contracted vendor. Procurement staff contacted the other potential bidders who stated that they did not bid either due to their production facilities being too far away to be competitive or because they did not supply asphalt concrete. Vulcan Materials' bid is at the same price as the previous year's contracted price. According to the bid, prices will be adjusted in July and October to reflect changes in raw material costs of asphalt cement only. Staff recommends your board's approval to award bid number 9871 to Vulcan Materials in the not-to-exceed amount of $680,000. Kevin Tabor of Public Works and I are both available for any questions you may have.
Is there any questions? Anybody in the audience want to make comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Now you can go back to Squaw Valley. Item number 7. Jennifer, good morning.
Jennifer Merchant with the County Executive Office here in Tahoe. I have 2 projects for your consideration today, recommended to you by the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association Board of Directors. The first funding request is for $197,000 and change in Tahoe Transient Occupancy Tax Infrastructure Funds to be allocated for interpretive displays at the UC Davis Historic Fish Hatchery. The former hatchery, initially used in the 1920s, is located at the corner of Highway 28 and Lake Forest Road, just east of Tahoe City. It's an interesting-looking building that I'm sure most of you have noticed as you pass by. On the right-hand side, it's got a green, interestingly shaped roof. UC Davis recently completed a $4 million restoration project at the hatchery site, which transferred the facility use to a modern field station and research center that is related to its Tahoe Environmental Research Center located in Incline Village. The interpretive display component of the project will capitalize off of its location adjacent to heavily used multi-purpose trails and provide an informational component for visitors and residents to learn about the facility's historic use as well as its current uses. The total project cost of the interpretive component is $342,570 with the balance of the funds provided by UC Davis. I would like to recognize Jeff Schlato, UC Davis Tahoe Environmental Research Center Director, as well as Heather Segali, who is the UC Davis Education Outreach Center Coordinator. And they're here in support of the project and could answer any questions should you have any. The second project we have before you today is a wayfinding signage component of Placer County's Tahoe City Transit Center. Peter Kratz referred to that earlier in his discussion today. The Transit Center, as you know, is located on the Forest Service's 64-acre property in Tahoe City. The $68,000 recommended allocation for the Resort Association will fund a demonstration signage project that is an outcome of an earlier project that your board had funded, and that was a wayfinding signage manual to illustrate common signage designs, as well as process for processing wayfinding signage. The project before you today includes signage that will identify the location of the transit center and also provides on-site directional signage for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists that highlight location of the transit center parking, other parking like raft parking, recreation, and other nearby services. And Nova Lance-Segi from the Department of Public Works, who is the lead on the project, is here if you have any questions about that project. Both projects are consistent with the Tourism Development Master Plan approved by your board and the Resort Association Board, and are recommended by the County Executive Office today for your approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, anybody in the audience have any questions on this item? I'll bring it back to the board.
Move for approval.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. So that takes care of 7A and B then? No, just A, okay. So 7B.
Chairman? Jim Durfee with Facility Services and Linda Oakman with the County Executive Office. We're here today to provide you with an update on the Capital Facilities Financing Plan. Some of you have probably not seen this plan before formally. It's been, I believe, 2 years since we updated it. But this is a tool that we have used over the last decade or so to track and plan for and allocate funds for capital facilities. And we're going to do a couple of things today. I'm going to give you just a little bit of background and discussion of projects that are on the capital facilities plan, and then Linda's going to walk you through the actual numbers and the changes that have come about as a result of planning and programming for finances over the next few years. The capital facilities financing plan provides a framework, of course, for the delivery of capital facility projects that are required over the next decade. This really goes back to the early 90s. I remember interesting hearings with Mr. Euler and Mr. Wygant and others on the board back in the early 90s when we were developing a capital facilities master plan, which also led to our capital facilities fee program, and ultimately has led to the development and construction of a number of new facilities. So it's been overall a very successful program. We started we adopted that plan in 1996. It really broke the county up into 3 regional service areas, and we developed plans for how we would program and how we would provide facilities over a 20-year period into those areas. As a result of those plans, the first major office that the county constructed in about 30 years was the Lariato Finance Building. That construction of that facility was $14.6 million. It was completed about 10 years ago. We followed that with the Juvenile Detention Center. An $8 million facility was completed. And then the Main Jail Housing Unit 4, which was a $7.5 million facility upgrade. And I think you're seeing the theme here that the planning process that your board and previous boards went through very successfully delivered a number of projects. The Fulweiler Admin Building at $2 million. The Community Development Resources Center was a $30 million facility. The Auburn Justice Center is a $37 million facility. And more recently, the Children's Emergency Shelter, $13.8 million. The South Placer Justice Center site and the courthouse, the Bill Santucci Center, $68 million construction project. And our most recent addition was the South Placer Building B, which we're going to have a raffle for to decide what we're going to call it at some point in time. Have a dedication to that, but that was a $21.6 million facility. So you can see that the planning process has worked quite well, and what we're doing now is simply updating that so that it moves it out a little bit into the future and it takes advantage of current modeling for our finances. The capital facilities financing plan is broken up into tiers. We have Tier 1 projects, which are the projects that are most near term, and those Tier 1 projects are the ones listed on the screen now. We have the Public Works relocation to Cabin Creek. That's scheduled to be completed in the next couple of months, and we should be on track to get moved up there. Colfax Library expansion and remodeling. Recently, your board authorized us to go out to bid for that project. Be a $1.8 million project, be completed over the next year. The Rockland Library, we are in design for a project in cooperation with the City of Rockland to move into a new facility down there. The West Placer Animal Shelter is in a preliminary design stage right now. That'll be the first of 2 animal shelter projects that'll be done, the first one in West Placer and then ultimately a new shelter in Auburn as well. The Auburn shelter is not a Tier 1 project. And then the kind of the granddaddy of them all, this will be the largest capital project that the county's ever undertaken. Pushes $100 million for a new corrections facility in South Placer. We are in the design-build RFP process for that right now. We'll be finalizing that process over the upcoming weeks and actually moving into award of a contract for the design-build team and starting design on that. So we are well underway on that particular project as well. Tier 2 projects are projects that are out a little bit further into the future. I should add that on the Tier 1 projects, the monies for the Tier 1 projects are programmed in. There are funds available in reserves to do those projects. Your board is asked to appropriate those into the budget as we need them to spend them. So we don't pre-appropriate, but the funding is provided as we need it. Tier 2 projects, these are projects that are out there a little bit further. These projects are not fully programmed into the funding yet, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit more. But you can see that the projects that we have out there is the Burton Creek Justice Center is essentially building a brand new Justice Center on the Burton Creek site to replace an aged facility. The Auburn Animal Shelter, Forest Hill Library, that's a program number for a 3,000 square foot library on a site to be determined. We have not selected a site or have a specific project there, but we've got the funding programmed for that. That particular library is one of the higher priority facilities on the library master plan, so we have been working incrementally through the library's master plan as well. Tahoe General Government Facility, we have $6.5 million programmed for that. That'll be the topic of a discussion a little further in your, I believe it's the next item actually on your board's agenda, to get direction to come back to finalize that process. And then we have improvements to buildings 113 through 115 at the Placer County Government Center, formerly known as the DeWitt Center, for $1.3 million. Those are all the upcoming Tier 2 projects. Then Tier 3 looks out much further into the future. We've identified a number of projects for Tier 3 to include warehouse and archives. One of the problems that we have within our facilities now is that we utilized a lot of the old DeWitt buildings for warehouse and archives. Those buildings have really reached the end of their functional lifespans. That's polite.
You think?
Actually, it's one of the highlights of my career is over the next year we're going to demolish about a third of DeWitt. So having worked on those buildings for the last 24 years, that does come with a certain amount of pleasure.
Those buildings ought to qualify for a bailout or something.
Yes, we're going to be recommending that we bail out of some of those buildings. We do have a programmed renovation of the Auburn Jail out about 8 years from now, 9 years from now, and then ultimately we need to construct a clinic laboratory facility for Health and Human Services. Tier 4 are projects that are just out there a lot further. We do at this point in time program $1 million annually for miscellaneous projects. These are smaller scale improvement projects that come along. Typically those are remodel type projects on a very small scale. Tier 5 is really getting out to the end of our planning horizon, but these are on here to highlight the ongoing need for replacement and/or expansion of facilities within our planning horizon. And you'll see that these are all programmed to be occupied out there at least 12 or 14 years from now. But it does put into perspective for your board the scope of the facilities needs that still do exist. So the support that you've provided over the years has succeeded in really a very ambitious construction program. We're really proud of the facilities we've been able to construct through this planning process, and we wanted to provide your update today and make sure that we are working forward. At this point, I will talk about this just a little bit, and then I'm going to turn over to Linda. One of the things to remember is that funding these capital construction projects is very dynamic. Costs can change rapidly, upwards, downwards. There's a lot of different cost escalators that we deal with as we adjust the long-term plan, and Linda will go into those in detail. But we have, in particular, I think right now, the finance market conditions, labor costs, material costs, all fluctuate. So we watch those trends pretty carefully. We make adjustments to our projected costs. At the same time, the financial folks are looking at the revenue side of things and looking how we can meld our needs, our costs, and the revenues as they come in, our resources together. The plan itself, Linda, do you want to take this over at this point? I think I walked over one of Linda's slides there, but you get me on a roll.
I'm Linda Oakman with the County Executive Office. Jim, I was prepared to go over the slide that Jim just went over, but that's okay. Save my breath. I did want to mention that the facilities plan was constructed using input from the County Finance Committee. That consists of the Treasurer Tax Collector, Auditor Controller, CEO's Office, Facilities, and County Council. So that the plan has been reviewed by those folks and was constructed using that input. So today we're asking your board to affirm the recommendations for the capital facilities project as presented in this plan. Since the plan was last updated, I'm sorry, I have to fumble with this a little bit. Since the plan was last updated, the economy has entered a recession, and the ongoing funding. Ongoing funding has been significantly reduced. The plan provides a framework for funding the critical projects that Jim just presented. While there's sufficient funding in the plan to fund these projects, some of them have been delayed due to funding constraints. The plan maximizes the use of capital facility impact fees where construction is due to growth. And no additional debt is recommended in this plan because currently the financial markets are volatile. And because of the current economy, the outlook for local governments is a negative outlook. And as a result, the municipal bonds are less attractive to investors. In this plan, the general fund reserves for fixed assets will decrease. Due to the economic circumstances, no additional to general fund reserves are envisioned, and the general fund contribution has been reduced by $60 million since the previous plan. At the end of the term, the general fund reserves for capital assets will be reduced by $14 million. Impact fee balances also will be reduced by 50% or $24 million by the end of the plan because the use of impact fees in this plan is maximized and we use it where we can. But also the revenue from capital facility impact fees is significantly reduced from the last plan because of the lack of development. And at each annual update, the revenue estimates and debt issuance will be reevaluated. The plan uses a number of funding sources, as shown in the slide. The general fund is the largest contributor. We've talked about using the capital facility impact fees on a cash basis. The slide shows the breakdown of the types of facilities that we're using the impact fees for. The South Placer Adult Detention Center will use the lion's share of the fees in this plan. So the action requested today is that you affirm the recommendations for the projects in this plan. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Robert, I'm assuming that the current tiers as projected with the attachment one, I guess, do in fact consider the current budget circumstance, that so things have slipped and it's as per the tiers as they're described with the dates.
Yes, that is the case.
Thanks.
And if I might add in, the tiers have slipped as well as, I think Linda went over it, the contributions from the general fund are down markedly. The projected contribution for impact fees are based upon declining levels of growth, at least for the next 2 years, and then the levels of growth are soon to go back up, showing from impact fees. One thing that I know most of your board is aware of, but I think it's helpful for the audience to understand, is that could you go back to the slide? It shows the percentages of contributions from.
Yes.
Yes, you see the general fund contributes to this plan about 51%, and impact fees are 27%. The city and other fees, that's, for example, the animal shelters that we're talking about are anticipated to be, at least in a overall context, a joint powers authority, so you see the cities contributing to the cost of those. Securitization, again, very helpful. Your county treasurer, in particular, has looked at its tobacco settlement revenues that are securitized in terms of a bonding source that bring cash to us in large amounts, and that's been plugged in, already been used in the past and anticipated to be used in the future. The reason why there's general fund dollars in there, and it also deals with where your individual projects are cited and when they can be constructed, is impact fees are only collected and only can be utilized to offset the percentage of growth, the cost and square footage of new facilities serving new growth. And so you'll see a high percentage of impact fees being used, obviously in the far west or south of the county where we've had the highest amount of growth, because that's where those large revenues have come in historically, and represented there by the $37 million, because it's essentially paid at the building permit stage on new development, where you have very low levels of development. You do not have those level of impact fees coming in, and hence the general fund picks up a larger portion of those type of projects. So you think of it in a regional context, especially to the far west, the Santucci Justice Center, even facilities in Auburn, significant contribution of impact fees on those type of facilities. As you move upslope, in counting the libraries potentially in that, and especially up here in Tahoe, you'll see much more larger amounts of general fund because you have decreasing amounts of growth, yet you need to replace these facilities. And so I think it's, again, many of your board members are aware of this relationship within the funding sources, but they're very large numbers, and I think it is just helpful to explain that in a regional context.
Any other questions, Robert? Any questions? Jennifer?
I wanted to follow up on Mr. Miller's comments about the general fund monies being used for these projects. It's a real benefit to us here in the 5th District because of our less dense development patterns and the fact that we have not grown, mercifully, to many of you, as the way the west end of the county did. I'd also like to point out that we really are the beneficiaries of this. Of the 10 Tier 1 and Tier 2 projects, 5 of them are actually in District 5, and 3 of the 10 are here in the Tahoe Basin. So this is a, the capital projects that we're looking at really within the next, I'd say, 5 to 6 years are going to be of real benefit to us. One thing I did want to just get a clarification on, and Jim, if you could just address this, that $6,500,000 that's currently allocated in this document for the Tahoe Government Center, that is just for the property acquisition, is that correct?
Correct. When we, and this will be the topic of our next item, but when we embarked on that program 3 years ago, we plugged that number into the finance plan for the purchase of a piece of property. it gets lost in the discussion a little bit, but what we've always intended to do was purchase a piece of property. We projected what that cost would be and put $6.5 million into the plan for that. That is the only money that we have programmed in this finance plan for that center until you get out to, it was either Tier 4 or Tier 5. I don't recall off the top of my head. But we don't have current funding beyond that program.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is this I'll open this up to the public. Anybody want to make a comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Do we have an action on this? Yes, we do.
Just one question, Mr.
Okay.
Real quick, on the South Placer adult detention facility. You say we are closing out the RFP process, or you're creating the RFP itself?
No, we are in the final stages of interviewing teams and making a selection.
Returning back to your board.
Okay, because we already have a construction manager for that project, right? Vanner is
Yes.
the construction manager for that
Yes.
project. And any indication at this point, I'm guessing the 98 million was kind of engineer's estimate, probably at a time when world market price for steel and concrete was a little bit higher than it is right now. Any indication based on these interviews that we might be looking at something a little less based on world market
No,
price?
and we're all waiting to open those envelopes.
Okay.
That's the last thing we get to do in the process. You know, I think we will see prices that are very indicative of the current market.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
You're looking for direction, I guess just verbal comments from the board, correct? Well, let's kick that off, I guess. First of all, I'd like to thank staff for the incredible progress that we've made over the last 15-ish years, I guess, with new facilities, many of which were desperately needed. I guess if there's any good news in here with the decrease in the collection of the facilities fee because of slowdown in growth, that also diminishes the need to put pressure on building some of these new facilities, although it's not much relief because most of the need has been in existence for a huge amount of time. And if you look at the tiers in 5, one of the pet peeves I have that sort of grates at me is that every day I think of the money that's lost at the county because the administrative center where the board works is about a 15-minute drive from the corporate headquarters, if you will, out at DeWitt, and staff going back and forth and/or board members doing the same is going to continue at least for the foreseeable future. And there are just a myriad of other examples like that, which is why over the years we've used things like the general fund and the tobacco securitization, which we could have used for any other needs. But we invested those in our facilities because the need is so pressing. So I guess in terms of the priorities and the sequence, it's acceptable to me. I don't see any glaring changes that should be made, other than I guess my pitch and hope is that as the future emerges, we like with tobacco securitization, look for other innovative ways to try to deliver some of these facilities more quickly because the need is just so glaring.
This is an action item, so do we need to vote on this, or what do you, just,
We're just asking you to affirm the recommendation for the capital facility construction projects. I don't know that necessarily needs a vote.
yeah, I'd take a motion.
I would move that we affirm the recommendations on the capital facilities financing plan.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we'll do number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Durfee again with Facility Services. The item that we have at this point in time is an update on our Tahoe Government Center site selection process, and we've got a couple of actions that we're going to be asking your board to take. This is a project, as you're aware, that's been ongoing now for about 3 years. We're going to be providing you with an update on the site selection process. There's been a lot lot of progress, a lot of work done in the year since you've heard this last. And we're going to be asking you to provide direction related to the selection priorities and for a process and timeline for finalizing our process for a site selection. And I'll expand on that later on in my presentation. The map that's up there simply shows the various sites that are on the table as we speak. I will be providing brief discussions of each of those sites. Back in April of 2006, your board authorized staff to proceed with a site solicitation to acquire property that would ultimately enable the consolidation of general government occupancies that are currently located in the Tahoe area in leased facilities. Our purpose in this consolidation effort was to bring departments and divisions from various leased buildings into a much more efficient county-owned facility. Just like everywhere else in the county, your board and previous boards have always tried, where possible, for us to own our own facilities rather than lease them where it makes sense, where we have long-term occupancies. We tend to be in business for a long time in certain business models in areas, and that's what we did here. Was we chose the business models, the various services provided that are very long-term. Those would include the Community Development Resources Agency, the Environmental Health Division, the County Executive Office, PIO, Emergency Services and RDA staff, the Department of Public Works, which is now out in Truckee, their engineering folks, the Assessor's Office, and then we could possibly co-locate with other agencies, including TRPA and the Air Pollution Control District, to provide the theme here, of course, is that these folks are all in the land development arena, and it would provide our customers with, if you will, with kind of a one-stop shopping approach. One of the things that we looked at in our initial site solicitation was the various attributes that the county was interested in, and we included this as we sent out the solicitation to property owners. It had to be in Placer County. It had to be proximate to either Highway 28, 89, 267, or be somewhere in Martis Valley. The size was a minimum of 2.2 acres, and that was simply a programmed size that would allow us to construct a 24,000 square foot building with surface parking. And it would have to provide convenient year-round access to I-80, and then existing and future access to alternative transportation modes as those come along. The site would have to have development capability, access to supportive infrastructure by 2010, 2011. That was simply the timeline that we had put into the criteria. We wanted to only do limited grading or special soil preparation. We didn't want to buy a site that required mass earth movement or had stability problems. We wanted limited environmental constraints. We didn't want a site that was going to be difficult to either entitle or construct on from environmental perspective, and we preferred that it be within redevelopment areas so that we could provide those redevelopment opportunities. The site also needs to have compatible surrounding land uses. We wanted it to be separated either by distance or significant natural or existing man-made barriers from residential or other incompatible land uses. We don't want to be a bad neighbor to anyone. We wanted to be able to comply with land use designations. In other words, we didn't want to go through significant rezoning or other significant entitlement changes. The site would preferably be proximate to other public, industrial, or commercial uses. We didn't want to do conversion of land that's currently used for grazing, timber production, or is designated as open space or protected habitat. I go through all of that to kind of set up the stage for the discussion of the properties that I'll get to in a minute. Finally, we wanted the fiscal consideration. Owner had to be willing to enter into a land option. There had to be an ability to develop or access infrastructure at a reasonable cost. We also wanted to have the ability to secure and develop the site at the lowest cost. So we were from the very beginning, we were putting together criteria that would help us narrow this down and choose a piece of property. Previous board actions related to this, in 2007, your board directed staff to perform more extensive evaluation on finalist properties. Originally, we had about a dozen properties we were looking at, and some of them just fell out of the process. Some of them, the owners elected not to participate after they got into it. And we had been through this winnowing down process, and in 2007, your board essentially shortlisted the properties to a property in Tahoe City called the Trading Post Center, which subsequently the owners removed from the solicitation. They elected not to participate. The BBLLC properties in Kings Beach, which your board is familiar with, and then Lot G in Timmalook in the Martis Valley was the third property that you asked us to take a further look at. Throughout this process, we've received a lot of community input. We've done, I believe we're up to like 14 or 15 public meetings now in terms of keeping the public informed and getting their input to the point where they're really tired of seeing us and they want us to get on with life, and I don't blame them. We have been out talking to the public, and the things that they've told us just all along is that really the project should be in the basin. It shouldn't be out in Martis Valley. They really like the idea of a TRPA co-location. They like the idea of a community enhancement project. They like being part of that. And the idea of being a catalyst to revitalization of an area was important to them. Most recently, your board took action last March to do a couple of things. You eliminated the Timmalook property in Martis Valley. You directed us to monitor BBLLC's application into the CEP process and to work with them to better quantify their costs. You may recall at that point in time, staff was concerned that the per square footage cost of that project was very high. We've worked very closely with Stephen Brown and his project to better identify and better quantify and understand those costs, and we believe A, the costs have come down somewhat, and B, we believe that the costs that are as presented now do provide a realistic picture of what the project will cost. But you also directed us at that point in time to continue to pursue new property leads and other economical opportunities for development. We did not go out and solicit for more properties, but we have had 3 properties come to the table since that time. We've gone through the same type of due diligence on those 3 properties that we did on the previous properties, and that's really the culmination of that effort is today to discuss those with you and get further direction. Properties currently under consideration at this point would be the BBLLC property, certainly, and then the Tahoe Tree Company property, which is located in Tahoe City, down near Grand Labakan, the Highlands Village project that is at Dollar Point, and then the North Tahoe PUD has come to us with a concept of co-locating with them on a portion of their property near the park off of National Avenue. Our public outreach has continued through this process. We've held 3 recent community meetings. We had a large meeting in February. We sent out about 2,500 notices to folks. What we did is essentially drew circles around the 3 sites that we're talking about, made sure that all of the neighborhoods around those sites were notified. We also posted notices in public places, and we were on the yahoogroups.com and on the county website as well. We've kept a running space on the county website, keeping people informed. We did press releases and letters to various associations and property owners groups. That particular meeting, we had about 80 folks show up to. We received, that meeting was held in Kings Beach. We received a lot of input, primarily that particular community group was very supportive of the BBLLC property and also was anxious that the county make a decision and move forward. Those were the real themes that we got out of that meeting. And I might note that in your packages, you have received summaries of the public comments, as well as we had provided actually full copies of all of the letters and different comments that we've gotten over the last months. We followed these up with presentations at the February 19th NITRAC meeting and the February 26th Squaw Valley MAC meeting. We've received written and verbal comments. Again, your board has received those. We've summarized those for you. At the NITRAC meeting, the NITRAC specifically was concerned about the timeline and the fact that this process has taken so long, and they actually recommended that your board consider the BBLLC project. The Squaw Valley MAC also expressed concerns about the delay. That MAC recommended the Tahoe Tree Company property for your board's consideration. Quickly, I'll go through the properties and talk about where they are. BBLLC is located on North Lake Boulevard in Kings Beach. It's a 4.3-acre parcel. It is in a CEP project. The proposed layout has our facility would be in this area here. There's a parking structure here. The other buildings are mixed use. The project that I think your board has seen updates on a number of times. It's currently in process. This particular site, in working with Mr. Brown on his site, and I wanted to actually personally thank him for all of the work he's done with us. We've spent, he and my staff have spent an awful lot of time together working on not only his first proposal to us, which was this lease purchase option, but also on two other options, which I'll run you through, that allow us other types of flexibility on his project. And Stephen has been very good to work with, and we really appreciate all the time and effort he's put into this. His first option, or his first proposal to us, was a turnkey developer-constructed project that would be built under a 7-year lease. It could be done, a lease purchase. It could be done under different terms, simply a owner-financed mechanism. The county, under that proposal, would acquire 63 spaces within the parking garage that I pointed out earlier. We would also need 26 off-site fleet parking spaces to be constructed by the county, not part of this project. And we would be taking advantage of a 28-space public parking lot, which would be constructed by the redevelopment agency, would be used by our customers and employees during the day. It would be available to the public as sites were available in it during the day, but then, of course, on the evenings and weekends it would be available to the public as well. The pro forma project cost, and this is something that you're going to see on all of these, what we tried to do was put together a project cost that included all of the costs, including, if it were appropriate, financing costs. So that's why you're going to see quite some variability in this cost. This particular project pro forma cost at $29.6 million includes that 7-year lease purchase agreement and the financing costs that accrue to that. The minimum county cost to move in would be $7.1 million that would be required in fiscal year 2012-13. That is broken out into the 63 spaces and our first lease payment. It requires a near-term commitment to spend the money, and it requires a commitment to spend the entire amount of money, and that's important to the discussion. This project is not purchase of a piece of land, which is what we had initially set out to do. This is actually the participation in and purchase of a fully turnkey facility that would be ready for us to occupy. This project does happen to have the lowest, what we called ongoing lease expenses, meaning that it is the project that would most rapidly eliminate those other outside leases that we are using. So that you'll see that theme in this comparison as well. That's what that means. Going on through that particular project, there's significant revitalization benefits. This project, as I think we're all aware, has very significant revitalization benefits to that neighborhood. It's a commercial core area. It's pedestrian and bike oriented. It would create great synergy, I believe, for other development in that area. It is close to bus service. There's bus stops close by. Having the county as an anchor is probably very critical to the success of this particular project. Mr. Brown has been clear about that, and frankly, staff agrees with him. We believe that our presence there would be a critical component of the success of that project. It is a CEP project. Again, as I said earlier, it's a turnkey project, and it has off-hour benefits of a number of amenities, primarily significant parking improvements in the area for the community. The project does come with risk. There's the potential risk of obtaining project approvals through the CEP project. We've heard that process is going to get cranked up here over the next couple of months, but we have been watching the TRPA process all along, and there is risk involved with that. The county doesn't have any control over a project timeline in this particular project. We're putting our fate in the hands of a developer, and we are dependent upon that developer's performance. Certainly, that's a measured risk. That's always something that we deal with on this type of a project. As I mentioned earlier, working with Mr. Brown, he's provided a couple of additional alternatives for us to consider to provide more flexibility in participating on his property. Option 2 is essentially the same project as option 1, but what it does is it changes the project from a developer financed and constructed project to a developer entitled project that would then, we would acquire a 0.8 acre piece of entitled land that would accommodate our 24,000 square foot building, and we would also acquire the 63 spaces within the developer constructed parking garage. We would then construct the building using our traditional bid methods and managed out of facility services. Again, it would require the 26 off-site fleet parking spaces, 28 space public parking to be constructed by the RDA. So in its finished form, it would be just like Mr. Brown's project, only we would be constructing our own building. It does reduce the cost from $29 million down to $22.4 million. Most of the reason of that is that we're taking out the long-term finance costs. Now, I have to warn you that after the presentation that Linda and I gave a few moments ago, we don't have money programmed to construct that $22 million building. That's a constant theme throughout all of our discussions today. This particular option, excuse me, would require a near-term construction commitment. In order for Mr. Brown's project to succeed, he needs our building to be constructed. So this particular option does come with a near-term commitment to construct. It does also lower our ongoing lease costs. The benefits of this is it keeps all of those same revitalization and commercial core benefits. The county stays as an anchor. Again, the risk factors are the potential risk of obtaining the project approvals. To that degree, we don't have control over the timeline, and because we have a near-term construction commitment, essentially our ability to defer those expensive improvements out into the future when we can program cash for those is eliminated. We would have to come up with a financing mechanism in order to participate in this particular option. Option 3 is a very different option provided by Mr. Brown on his property. It's a land-only option, and what it does is it provides us with the opportunity to purchase the 2-acre parcel for our building, and that would accommodate our building and a surface parking lot. This particular option would dramatically change the look and ultimate face of that project at BBLLC. We would be taking up, instead of 0.8 acres for our building and participating in the parking garage, we would be taking up 2 acres, constructing surface parking. I believe that the parking garage would at that point not be constructed. We would still be required to find 28 spaces in that parking facility that would be constructed by the RDA. This particular project has a pro forma project cost of $25.8 million. It's different because of the differences in parking costs and the purchase of 2 acres rather than 0.8 acres. It does have the benefit of having a minimum county cost of $5.2 million, which is the purchase of the 2 acres, and then we don't have a near-term construction commitment. We could delay construction of the building until such time as we could afford to do so. I do not know what that does to Mr. Brown's ability to develop the rest of his property around that. Ultimately, it would certainly provide some revitalization of the area, not to the degree that the options 1 and 2 would, but ultimately it would provide that at such time as the county is able to come up with the financing to construct the building. The Tahoe Tree Company is located at Westlake Boulevard, Tahoe City, really at the corner of Grand Labakan and Westlake Boulevard. It's a 10.18 acre property that's currently a wholesale retail nursery operation. They're actually growing trees on site and wholesaling those out. And they do also have a facility on the site. It's located here. There's a 6,000 square foot building on the site that has been been used as retail space over the last several years. Conceptually, our project certainly fits on this site. There's adequate coverage available on the site for our project. On this site, the Highlands Village site, you'll see that we've put together conceptual site layouts. These certainly aren't made to indicate that this is exactly what we would do on the site. It's simply to show that there are ways for us to put our parking and building on the site. This site has some interesting components to it. There's stream environment zone around these areas here that a campus would have to be developed around. I think that everybody believes that would be aesthetically pretty pleasing. It does limit our ability to lay things out on the site, but as you can see from just this concept, it is workable. The proposal that we got from the owners would include us acquiring the 10.18 acre land that includes a 6,000 square foot building. We would then have to entitle and construct the government building and parking. We would also, in order to use the 6,000 square foot building, we would have to construct tenant improvements, which we estimate to cost approximately $2.3 million. Those could either be done right away or deferred until later. Your board has whatever options it would like to choose, should you choose this particular property. The pro forma project cost for this site is $20.5 million. Our minimum cost to purchase it, based on an asking price, not on a negotiated sale, but based on an asking price, is $5.7 million. It does provide optional near-term construction of the existing building, or that could be delayed, and we could indefinitely delay construction of our ultimate facility. This has the second lowest ongoing lease expenses at $1.5 million, which does assume that we occupy the existing building in the near term in order to achieve those savings. Benefits of this particular site are that there is excess developable land. There's a moderate initial outlay for the purchase and TIs that allow near-term county occupancy. It is walkable distance to some amenities, not on the scale that the Kings Beach properties are, but there are some restaurants and stores within walkable distance, at least in the summertime. There are year-round bus routes nearby. There's a bike route, essentially the bike trail actually goes across the front of the property. It would maintain the existing nursery operator, and it would generate lease revenues based on that. The owners have indicated that they wanted to continue their wholesale operations on the site, and it does allow for the indefinite delay of the construction of a facility until funding becomes available. Risks potential on this particular site are certainly the risks of obtaining project approvals at a later date. We'd have to go through environmental review and entitlement to construct new facilities there. There's a potential risk of community acceptance and support of a project, as there is with any project that's not in process already. And there's certainly risks associated with coverage, the SEZ setbacks, environmental conditions, and then there is a I think well-documented traffic congestion problem along Westlake Boulevard there. Now, ultimately, projects are probably part of the solution to that problem, but it's certainly something that would have to be analyzed and mitigated. The next property that that was approached us, the Highlands Village project. It's also probably well known as the Nahas property. It's located at Fabian and Highway 28 at Dollar Hill. It's an 11.41 acre property that has already entitled for a mixed-use development. Here's our conceptual site layout. Again, this is not to indicate this is what we would recommend doing on the site, but it certainly shows that it could be done. There's significant coverage available on this site, significant excess coverage available, which provides the county, if this site were chosen, with a number of options in the future, either for expansion of county facilities or resale or development as future boards would see fit. The deal here would be to acquire the 11.4 acres of land. Again, like Tahoe Tree, the county would have to entitle and construct the buildings and all infrastructure. It would require 121 parking spaces and snow storage. The pro forma project cost for this particular project is $20.6 million. It has a minimum county cost of $5 million, which is the asking price. Again, just like Tahoe Tree, what we've used here is the asking price as our minimum cost. There is no near-term construction commitment, so that we can indefinitely delay construction until financing becomes available. This has, along with a couple of the options at BBLLC, the highest ongoing lease expenses, because we don't provide any opportunity to reduce those leases until we construct a facility. The benefits are, as I mentioned, the excess developable land that could be sold or developed in the future. There's year-round bus service, and it is along a bike route. It allows for the indefinite delay of the government center until funding's available. There is the potential risk of obtaining project approvals at a later date. And there's a potential risk of community acceptance and support of the project, compatibility with neighboring land uses, traffic impacts, and so forth. That particular site, one of the things that's not said here is that it's not walkable. There's really no services within walkable distance of this particular site. It is a very developable piece of land. And then finally, we have discussions with the North Tahoe Public Utility District on National Avenue. You can see that the various facilities that are currently on the site. NTPUD had provided this conceptual layout, which would have us sharing the site with them and sharing infrastructure costs and so forth. This is a very preliminary concepts with them. It would result in a partnership with NTPUD for joint development. They have said that they would be amenable to us acquiring land and constructing our improvements independently. It is a very preliminary proposal, so we don't have cost estimates, but presumably it would be in the same price range as the other projects, dependent upon the cost of infrastructure to the site. It certainly provides us with an alternate site should any of these other sites prove infeasible or your board decide that you don't want to entertain those at this point in time. It's I think, a good opportunity for us to cooperate with another government agency should your board elect to go that direction in the future. We've put together these tables of pro forma costs for your comparison purposes. What I'll ask is that you concentrate on the light lavender or purple areas of each of these slides. Option 1, of course, has the highest pro forma cost because it has $6.8 million worth of financing costs in it. That is the higher cost there. And again, we put this together just so that we'd be able to compare side by side the different options. Option 2 has a $22.4 million cost with $1.7 million lease payments. This option is less expensive, if you'll recall, because we are constructing the facility with using our own financing, not using developer financing. Option 3 is the land-only project. Interestingly, it's the second highest pro forma project cost, and that has to do with the cost of the land and the construction of parking. The Tahoe Tree project is actually the lowest pro forma cost of all of the options by about $100,000, and then Highland Village is $20.6 million is the second lowest. Our current allocation of funding for this, as I mentioned earlier, is $6.5 million. We put this table together to show what the minimum county cost and then potential near-term investment would be for any of the various sites. You can see that option 3, Tahoe Tree and Highlands Village, all fit within that particular fiscal parameter. Should your board elect to go to one of the more expensive options or one of the options that requires a near-term commitment, it would require us to go back to the drawing board on the county's the capital plan that you just looked at, and looking within the revenue modeling to determine where else we could find revenue to bring to the table in order to do that. At this point, I'd like to entertain a conversation with your board about selection priorities. What we'd like to do is get direction from your board to finalize our analysis based on how your board prioritizes its desires and needs for these different sites. And I'm going to go through just a couple of slides here to give you some things to think about and talk about. And based on your input and direction, what we'd like to do is put together an analysis tool that ranks the sites based on weighted considerations based on your board's priorities. The priorities that we've come up with here are not intended to limit your board's ability to give us direction. They're simply a guideline, and they're based on the community input we've gotten and the information that we've gleaned and our professional analysis of the various options and sites. So as we go through these, I'd like you to please be thinking about them, and whatever direction you can give staff will be appreciated. In terms of facilities issues, we'd like you to consider things like the site's physical and location attributes. We've talked a lot about those already. Some of the things that we came up with were the site's various abilities to accommodate our facility requirements. Is it expandable? Is it proximate to community amenities, walkable, so forth? And then advisory boards support, and by that what we mean is the NITRAC and Squaw Valley MAC support, and I think I said earlier that those two MACs have made recommendations. Revitalization, I think, is one of the key points that has been on the table all along. We'd like to know your board's, how much weight your board wants us to give revitalization. Does the site achieve redevelopment goals, economic synergy, all of those kinds of things? And I made a note to myself to ask also, as you think about this, can we afford that investment? Are we able to invest in a site that provides that, given the financial considerations we have? And I think there are options there that certainly do that. So, but I would like you to consider that as you're making your considerations. I think risk is an important factor for your board to consider. All projects have risks. We understand that. How we manage those risks in a large way ultimately drives what kind of projects that we end up with. So we'd like to understand what your board's appetite for these various types of risks are, how important that is to you as we go forward. And then cost, and I think that in this day and age, and certainly your board and previous boards have always tried to provide facilities at the best value to the taxpayers. And so how important is cost to you, and how do you want us to weight those particular aspects? In conclusion, we've looked at a number of properties. The property owners have been very cooperative with us in helping us gather information. I'd like to extend thanks to all of them. I need to thank my staff, Mark Rideout, Lori Morse, and Mary Dietrich. They have almost countless hours involved in this over the last 3 years, and have just done an amazing amount of analysis on these various properties. There's literally boxes of analysis that goes behind the presentation that you've seen today. We would request that your board give us direction related to selection priorities, as I talked about. That can be just in the form of a conversation that we'll listen to carefully, and then we will come back, if it's your board's direction, we'll come back with a ranking tool that utilizes those priorities. We would also recommend, frankly, that your board direct us to come back at the July Tahoe meeting with a conclusion to this and a recommendation on a specific site. So with that, I know it's been a very long presentation, but I appreciate your indulgence. It's a lot of information. I would turn it to your board for conversation.
Start over. Robert, do you have any comments?
I don't have any grand conclusions off the top of my head. I think we all met with staff prior to the meeting. I'm making that assumption anyhow. But all else being equal, the revitalization economic impact is a priority to me. But all the issues are not equal. Obviously, today we have to consider the cost more than normal, and I guess that doesn't worry me as much if we can argue that there's greater value created, if there's value for the additional dollars. So in other words, if a project costs somewhat more, but there are huge economic development and revitalization benefits, I'm comfortable with that. The dollar differences, of course, are something that each of us are going to have probably somewhat different perspectives on. It is important to me to consider the functionality of the site. In other words, I don't want to create a circumstance where people have to get in their cars and drive 3 miles for lunch every day. That has an impact on a lot of things, including employee productivity. And with all of those thoughts, I don't have a particular preference. I guess one thing we need to really think about, and maybe it's something we need to do some more research on between now and then, is our current master facility plan that we just readopted does not provide for completing this project for a long time. And if the goal is still just to secure the site, then I think that is going to drive the outcome, the decision significantly. So that's something perhaps we need to ponder between now and July. I think that's the thrust of my comments off the top of my head.
Yeah, before the existence of the Tahoe Tree facility, I was comfortable that we recommend moving forward with the Kings Beach project. I share Robert's enthusiasm for the revitalization that will come with having not only the kind of the permanent employee base, but also the visitors, the kinds of visitors that facility then attracts. People who come, get out of their cars, do business, and then stay for lunch or do other appointments right there in the area once they've already parked. I don't see that opportunity as strongly with the Tahoe Tree property. I don't think it's, while it may be reasonable to expect that some percentage of the employee workforce might walk down to the bridge tender or perhaps a little bit beyond, I don't see that same opportunity existing with folks driving in to do business. I say that drive in, do their business, get back in their car, and then drive back off to wherever they came from or wherever else. So I don't see the economic revitalization aspect as strong on the tree company property. What I like about the tree company property is it doesn't, and I may be deluding myself a little bit, it doesn't seem to be as fraught with TRPA torpedo potential as perhaps Mr. Brown's project might be. Now, look forward to hearing from Mr. Brown and getting a sense of how progress is going with his project, because I think as we've gone throughout this process, that particular location, because of what it can mean to the Kings Beach area, has been and does continue to be my first preference. And quite frankly, just in terms of staff time moving forward, those are the two properties that I would be concentrating on. I don't think I think I share Robert's sentiment that the Dollar Hill piece is just too far away from anything.
Thank you so much for a comprehensive presentation on this. For me, the revitalization and redevelopment aspect is above and beyond everything else. Obviously, finances play a close second in that. We're looking at a range of, $20.5 million to $29.5 million roughly. So that's a fairly substantial range in costs. So I think they all meet the facility requirements in terms of what we're looking for. Redevelopment and revitalization, my number one priority in this, followed closely, as I say, by the economics of the project. I'm willing, as Robert expressed, to spend more on a project if I think it will bring additional benefit to a community and to the county. I think yesterday, when Brett Story gave the presentation on the cogen facility, we all understand that the equation there, we get more benefits out of creating energy through a cogeneration facility than we actually obtain on a basic dollars and cents model. So I think those two are really, those are sort of comparable ideas in terms of what truly is our economic benefit. Is it just dollars and cents, or is it more than that? Is it environmental? Is it social, cultural rebuilding fabric of communities? To me, those all need to be part of the fiscal analysis. Very, very important to me is the walkability and the access to transit. I think, as both Robert and Kirk said, we want people to be able to walk to and from places from this beautiful new facility that we're going to be building. I do think we need to take a long, hard look at the real risks and try to come up with some methodology for evaluating that. Something that was not in your suggestions, but I think is very important to think about, is proximity to expected areas of future development. Where in the eastern end of Placer County are we really looking at potential future development? My perspective is it's mainly going to be North Star and the Martis Valley. We're going to have some additional development, infill, a little bit of redevelopment on the West Shore, Tahoe City, Alpine, Squaw, Donner Summit, where I live. But where are we really looking at the bulk of that to go, and how accessible should a government center be for those projects? As far as I'm concerned, the expandability of the site is lowest on my list of priorities, for the reasons that I was really just mentioning. We've got a limited future of development and redevelopment up here in the basin and surrounding areas from the summit east. So just to recap, revitalization, finances, walkability and transit, and I'm putting these in order of importance to me, risks, proximity to potential future development, and last, expansion.
Jim?
I agree with all the comments that have been made. I do want to follow up on the expandability. If we went with the option 2 with the BBLC property on less than an acre, does that limit any expansion?
Yes, that option would be just for a 24,000 square foot building. That would be, all we would own would be .8 acres, the building, and our portion of the parking garage.
So would that eliminate the air pollution control district coming in?
No,
So
the
that-
24,000 square foot building is large enough for all of those agencies and occupants that I discussed earlier. That's what it's programmed for.
Well, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the presentation. It was very well done, and thank you for meeting with me ahead of time. Quite frankly, I'm going with option 2 for the BB LLC at this point, but we do need to look, take a look real closely at all the financing options as well.
And if I could just follow up, if I didn't make it crystal clear, my direction to you would be there are only 2 projects in front of us here that would fall within any of these, and I personally believe that the Kings Beach project would be a better match for what I'm looking for in terms of a project and what the community is looking for in terms of a project. So I'm pretty much in line with Kirk on what are the real potential sites out there.
As a point of clarification, when we talk about the Kings Beach site, there's really there's 2 variations on one project, and then there's essentially a completely different project.
Right.
Are you interested in all 3 of those options further explored? And I'm simply throwing that out for discussion.
My preference actually is that we continue with discussions along the lease purchase, the option 1, as opposed to necessarily the option 2. I just think that from an overall, I think it gets us to where we want to be faster in terms of occupation and getting that Kings Beach area moving.
I would look at 1 or 2.
Jim's at 2. What are you, Robert?
Jim's at
1
10.
or 2.
1 or 2. And I'll just make my comment real brief. I think that the revitalization impact of the BB LLC, any of the 3 projects, to me, outweighs any of the other, just because of what it will help us achieve in Kings Beach as a bigger picture. I would work on 1 and 2. And I mean, the sooner, I don't know how soon we can do this, but I mean, the cost is definitely going to play into this, what we can and can't do. But at the end of the day, I think we'd all kick ourselves if we don't take this opportunity to give Kings Beach another good jolt. And I'll open it up for public comment now, since we already made our decision.
Ellie Waller, Tahoe Vista resident. The Government Center is another example of the North Shore needing a mechanism or process to conduct a vote. At a recent project, it was suggested that the county provide funding to the PUD, and they came up with an estimate of $8,000 to $10,000. I can't speak on behalf of the Tahoe City PUD or the other independent water district, but $25,000 would cover the process. Is a small request in comparison to what you go through with public hearings on community input. My personal preference isn't on the board anymore. I thought the Martis preference was good. You wouldn't have to determine which community is in more need of economic revitalization. And I would just like to thank Jim also for the detailed package. Thank you.
Thank you. Where'd Mr. Brown go? I thought I saw him moving. Oh, he's there. Okay, anybody?
How are you doing today? Thanks for coming up the hill. My name is David Polivy, Kings Beach business owner, resident. I'm also the current chair of the North Tahoe Regional Advisory Council. And we're a little bit out of practice on our action items from the past 4 years, and so we didn't get a letter into your packet. And I just want to make clear 2 of the motions that were both made and passed at our meeting in February when Facility Services came and gave us a similar presentation. The first one was to support the BB LLC as the preferred site for the Tahoe Government Center, and the second motion was to urge you, the Placer County Board of Supervisors, to make a decision on this project within the next 3 months, and we felt that was an adequate timeline, mostly because this project has been opened up and closed and opened and closed numerous times, and we've seen certain specifics of the proposals, et cetera, change as well. And it's time, and as our director here said, his staff has spent countless hours working on this. It's time to start counting those hours and dedicating some funds into some different places. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And that was as the chair of the North Tahoe Regional Advisory Council. I'll now take off that hat and speak just as a Kings Beach resident and business owner. And just really echo a lot of what you folks have already said regarding cost cannot be the overriding factor. It is absolutely imperative and important. But I think there's some other ones to take into account. One being redevelopment potential. I think we've all agreed Kings Beach provides a great opportunity for that. Number two, really being return on investment. And I think Kirk and Jennifer hit on that, and as a business owner, that really echoes with me a lot more. And it's the return on investment you're going to get. Sure, upfront costs might cost a little bit more, but in the end, sure, people are going to be having lunch in town. People are going to be matriculating and shopping in the local businesses. In return, that's going to generate more sales tax. It's going to generate better economic development, more economic opportunities, and hopefully increase property taxes as we go through. 3, vehicle miles traveled. I think Kings Beach just really provides the best opportunity for that on a daily basis. Employees and staff won't be having to leave via vehicle to do a lot of their daily activities and routines. They can even go grocery shopping in a fairly close distance. Anchor tenant, I can't say enough about that. We need an anchor tenant. I mean, it is so important, and this would be an ideal tenant to have there year-round, not seasonal, to be there during the off-season and still shopping, eating lunch, doing whatever it is that happens there. Off-hour benefit, I think options 1 and 2 provide the best ability for that, as was really talked about. I'll be really quick, but having the shared parking is an absolute, shared parking garage even would be an absolute benefit. I think option 3 is a terrible option, and you guys should throw that out if you can immediately. And I personally don't think we need to vote on this. There's been so much public input throughout the years on this project. You can come to meetings. Facilities has hosted a number of public meetings. The North Tahoe Regional Advisory Council, we've heard it at least 4 times over the past 3 years. We don't need to vote on this item. You're perfectly able to make a decision yourself. So thanks and have a great day.
Thank you.
David, if I can just make one minor correction.
Yes.
I actually came down the hill to be here.
Sorry,
so.
good work.
Good afternoon. My name is Sherry Springer. I'm the Executive Director of the North Tahoe Business Association. And if I can very quickly thank the Placer County CEO's office and all of you for a wonderful ceremony yesterday. It was really great. And I want to say this in a positive way, but one of the things that I heard from several of our community members was it may be small, but it's such a great positive start for Kings Beach. So thank you very much. I know I'm going to say a lot of things that you've already heard and we'll probably hear more of in just a little bit, so I'm going to go really fast. Last year, during the joint meeting that the Tahoe City Downtown Association and the North Tahoe Business Association held, overwhelming response throughout the North Lake Tahoe area came out for Kings Beach being the location for the government center. There have been some new developments with new locations popping up. The one new development is that Kings Beach is still the #1 area in need of revitalization in North Lake Tahoe. That is unquestionably still on the table. Kings Beach location for this government center offers so many advantages, and many of them have been mentioned. I just want to stress them again. Location to commercial core and pedestrian environments. People shop, people dine, people will go out to lunch, people will run their errands in this area if the government center is located in the commercial core area of Kings Beach. Access to the public, that's a huge thing. In my profession, 9 years of working with downtowns, I've worked with cities that have worked very hard to keep their city halls or government centers in their commercial core areas, regardless of the additional cost involved, because the return doubles and triples the additional costs. I've also studied cities that have let their government centers or city halls go out of their downtown or commercial core districts. Those cities today are fighting hard to find a way to get them back into their commercial core areas. So the economic impact on a district that is walkable and pedestrian friendly, and people don't have to get in their cars to drive to go to lunch, is huge. And we'll return, and we'll definitely make up for the additional costs and the outlay of construction. So I'm not going to repeat everything else you've heard, but the one thing I do want to say is regardless of what you do decide about a location, let's do it one day in our lifetime, preferably, and keep it in the redevelopment area and in the basin. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Hi, Teresa Mae Duggan, beautiful Kings Beach property owner and longtime resident. Obviously, I'm here to cheerlead for Kings Beach. I'm also on I'm the chair of the organization committee, and we really look forward to partnering with Placer County to help you in raising additional funds to maybe upgrade amenities for the Kings Beach core, all of that. We're ready to go. Another thing that wasn't on your matrix too much was environmental impacts and the benefits that Stephen Brown's property will provide to Lake Clarity. And while Tahoe Tree would be, it's in Tahoe City, that's fine. But I think Kings Beach, one of the largest polluters in Lake Tahoe with that fine sediment, and what Stephen Brown gets to do, is allowed to do, will make a dramatic impact on the environment, and we need to do that. So go Kings Beach.
Carol Savory, Kings Beach resident. I won't repeat what everyone else said, but I agree with everything that Dave Pallavi said. I thought he said that quite well. I would like to emphasize this is a long-term investment, so I understand the cost considerations, and we need to find financing from somewhere, but don't lose sight of that because this is a capital long-term investment. I'd also like to say that the Kings Beach location is an opportunity for your board to work more closely with TRPA. I thought what Joanne Marquetta said yesterday around environmental cleanup while keeping in mind the economic and social needs of the area, this offers a wonderful opportunity to try and work with TRPA. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. The other thing I'd like to mention is in 2008, I went to the Economic Development Breakfast, and there was a speaker there. The keynote of that morning was on redevelopment, and I think to Sherry Springer's point, absolutely vital to do this in a redevelopment area, wherever that is. Obviously, I'm recommending Kings Beach, and I think it really needs to be in the basin as well. So, my 2 cents. Thank you.
My name's John. I was up here before, Tahoe Tree Company. Don't throw in the towel on Tahoe Tree, please. I have a lot of friends in Kings Beach, and it's a tough decision for you guys. I would like to invite you guys. You guys went up to the Ritz yesterday. If there's an opportunity for staff to put together a site visit, you'll fall in love with the property. It's a beautiful piece of property. There's a lot to offer. Tahoe Tree. I just want to bring up a few brief points that have been touched on but maybe not clarified. We did a traffic study, and there's a net decrease in traffic at Tahoe Tree with this project if you guys were to come in. The retail nursery and sandwich shop will be no longer because it'll be weekends only for the nursery. So those two large-scale businesses are now gone and only on the weekends. Excuse me, a little nervous here. It's a more central location for the whole county and all of its citizens. Absolutely, can't argue that. You'll get money back on a lease, which to the cost. And the redevelopment issue, it's a compelling argument on both sides, I think. Probably it's a good argument with Kings Beach and want to see Kings Beach succeed. But there are 48 positions right across the street that the county employs within 600 feet of the Tahoe Tree Company property. And as a result, those would be leaving if it went over to another site. But anyway, please come out to Tahoe Tree if the staff can put it together or call me separately. Love to show you the place, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So,
Wyatt Ogilvy, in representation of Stephen Brown. And Stephen and I wanted to take the opportunity first to thank Facilities Department and their staff for what's been an extensive dialogue over the past couple of years. Answer a few of the questions that were raised in your conversation and deliberation, make a few points of our own. I sent Mr. Boyle a couple of images that Stephen wanted to have projected. I'm not sure if we can coordinate for that to happen.
Let me kind of interject at this time. In the degree of fairness with all the properties, we did not include any elevations in the presentation.
Oh, okay.
Because what we want to do is keep it on the kind of the objective level review rather than renderings of what could be built at any sites.
Oh, that's fine. Happy to do that. Let me start by addressing a couple of the items that were raised in your conversation. I think the first was the TRPA torpedo factor, as Mr. Euler put it. And I think we all know that factor firsthand. I think that Mr. Marchetta's update to you yesterday probably gave you some insight in terms of the regional plan update and that potential torpedo that's out there in terms of the date of that. And I think that is a challenge that the county and property owners face at any location. And that is something that, regardless of how you select a site, that's very real in terms of what happens in the interim towards adoption and any potential litigation that could ensue during adoption. At this site, clearly the current proposal is under the CEP program, the Community Enhancement Program. However, I think that the majority of the elements of Stephen's project that we're preparing to go to contract for a joint environmental document for an EIR and an EIS, that there are alternatives that the government center might be able to be done outside of the CEP, even if that process were to falter. So I think the CEP and the unknowns there should not necessarily negatively impact your decision as it relates to selection of one of the options at the Kings Beach Town Center site. So hopefully that addresses Kirk's question. In terms of Supervisor Holmes' question in terms of expandability, this came up in our dialogue in recent months with facilities through the evaluation of these other sites. In that dialogue and deliberation, I think we identified that the government center in Tahoe City is different than, or this end of the county, and Lake Tahoe is a little different than the western end of the county in that we have limited land still available to be developed. As Supervisor Montgomery referenced, a lot of it's going to be infill and redevelopment with limited new development. Of the different departments that we identified, there was a fairly small potential or foreseen need in the future for expanded facilities, and what we thought we could potentially do to address or give that expansion potential would be there's significant there's significant office space still remaining within the project that we could put a leasehold out in a future, an option that would give you that expandability option. So I guess just to wrap it up and conclude, we're at a critical point with this project going forward towards contracting an environmental document. It's a costly endeavor and a lengthy endeavor. I think that the original reason we went back through this analysis were concerns related to cost at this site. Although if you exclude the financing element, there's about a 10% maybe cost disparity. We've heard from the community in terms of the importance of revitalization and that investment. And if we don't have some direction and come towards conclusion, it's either going to complicate the environmental document or stall progress on this project. So I'd encourage you to make a recommendation to staff so that we can continue to work towards seeing a project here in Kings Beach at Stephen Brown's property in the Kings Beach Town Center. Thank you.
I'm Stephen Brown, BBLLC. I have a pass out. Is that okay?
You going to pass out? Is that what you said?
I too would like to thank you for your presentation, and you too, Jim. Facilities, we have really worked very hard trying to come up with some solutions to this facility there, particularly in Kings Beach. If you look at the site plan, the first one, you'll see the blue building. That is where the facilities would be, the government facilities. The second page is the elevation of that building. And the third page is the Center Park public area that'll have coffee shops and et cetera open. Can you just imagine working at the government facility, then walking across the street and sitting at the picnic table, having lunch during lunchtime right there on the beach, being right there in town, being able to buy things, not get in your car, not drive all around, not waste time, and be able to just relax a little bit during that time and enjoy the lake, enjoy, really one of the prettiest spots in all the United States. Wyatt brought you up to date with the TRPA. We are in trying to get the EIR, EIS going. It's a slight holdup with TRPA. They're extremely tough to work with. But just so the public will know, we have reduced the height of the building on the end to 56 feet, and TRPA has agreed to that. We've also done some other things that our project, to really help our project, that people had suggested, and we listened to them, and we have done that on our project. And we are really hoping that next year, at this time, we are through with TRPA, and we are about ready to build our building. That's our goal. I also wanted to tell you that, I know that the money situation is very important. Right now, we're in a tremendous recession. We can probably build a building even cheaper than what we had been telling everybody a few months ago because prices are continuing to come down. But if we do the lease option, yes, you pay a little bit of money for that money, but don't forget the county, even if the county uses their own money, they still pay money for their own money. So you got to look at all of this and try to figure out really how it's best. I would really like to encourage you, all of you, to come up with a decision and either buy or lease, but do it in Kings Beach. We have got to revitalize Kings Beach. This is really one of the last chances, I feel, that we have for a long time. So thank you again for your help.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrari.
Dave Ferrari, property owner and business owner in Kings Beach. I would just like to echo really quickly, thank you guys and redevelopment for the nice sign and the great ceremony yesterday and the great welcome to our town on the eastern end. And I would also support the government center to be in Kings Beach. I think the wheels are slowly grinding forward, and it's just feeling like that way. So we've got the sign up now. I also like to echo what Rich said in redevelopment, that our project is in conversations with the neighboring properties to try to work together to get something going there. But nothing will make it go as well as if we can get the highway project moving forward and get the government center coming in. I think then we'll really be able to attract investors there. I think it's been a sad state of affairs a little bit this year, in that a couple of our long-term businesses are, in trouble or in bankruptcy now, with the trade winds in town being up for sale and in bankruptcy, bank owns it, and seeing what's happening up at the Calneva. I think both of those things give a real sense of kind of what's going on that end of Placer County. I thank you for your time today. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Dave.
Good morning. Bill Johnson, Kings Beach residents. And I'd like to thank you guys again, and especially for the deliberation I heard today. It's encouraging. I think there are a lot of investors and developers and, of course, the locals looking at this combination of the roundabouts and the 3 lanes and a government center really starting the ball rolling, giving everybody confidence. And I'd just like to second everything else you've heard today from the Kings Beach people. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to close this hearing. I think you've got your direction. Do we need a formal action or anything? Or?
I wasn't asking for any formal reaction, formal action today. I got reaction. I got the reaction I was looking for. Thank you very much. I think we can condense your comments down and utilize those. We will, I believe, plan on bringing this back to your board probably no later than your July meeting up here.
Yes.
Since we have so much information, I think we should have a little bit more. I think it'd be worthwhile doing a present value calculation on the build-out of all of the sites as per the comments.
We've done it, and we will have that for you. And we've also analyzed the opportunity cost, if you will, of spending cash, so we can provide all, we've done all of that.
Cost of capital discussion is going to be somewhat arbitrary, but I think it still would be useful to consider those relative differences.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your patience. I know it was a very long presentation, but
That's all right.
I really appreciate it.
We'll have you make up for us. I'm sure you will. Thank you.
The board is going to take about a 5-minute break before, and then we've got some more department items to go through, and thank you for everybody's patience. 9, Health and Human Services, and Maureen, you're up first. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Good morning. Maureen Bauman, Director of the Adult System of Care. This morning I have an exciting request that will allow Placer to benefit from a regional opportunity. We're asking for 2 actions on this item. Your approval of a contract with the California Institute of Mental Health to provide regional coordination for a regional partnership 3-year grant in the amount of $1.8 million from April 2009 through June 2012. No general funds are required for this item. And also to authorize Placer County to act as the fiscal sponsor for the Central Region's application. Central Region of California Mental Health Directors Association is eligible and has applied for a workforce education and training grant to provide support and activities that complement the specific county workforce development required and funded by the Mental Health Services Act. The Central Region has 19 counties, Yuba Sutter's at the top and Fresno's at the bottom, and the region has requested that Placer County be the fiscal sponsor for this project. The Central Region has recommended that the grant support services be contracted instead of a county operating them. So we are recommending that they're contracted with the training organization, the California Institute for Mental Health. We think this is the most efficient way to do it so that no county is burdened with this responsibility. As a fiscal sponsor, Placer County will be contracting with CMH to provide the services outlined in the application. These activities will be a benefit to Placer County as they will augment the work that we're doing locally, and they'll support things such as work with state colleges, work with state colleges and universities, curriculum development and some training. So those things that make sense to be done regionally as opposed to locally. So Placer County will be reimbursed for any costs incurred in this process. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and recommend approval.
Any questions? Is there anybody, before we take a vote, in the audience that's interested in this? It's seen none. We all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
And you you're up again.
I am. Second item is presented on behalf of the Community Services Commission. It's also exciting in that we are bringing this forward in order to assure that Placer is able to benefit from anticipated federal stimulus revenue. The request is the approval of a resolution authorizing the Director of Health and Human Services to apply for and enter into a contract with the California Department of Community Services and Development to receive an augmentation of funds under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, to also be able to make any amendments to that contract. And just to make a note that no county general funds are associated with this requested item. The California Department of Community Services and Development currently makes funds available to Placer County in the amount of about $174,000. These are managed under our Community Services Commission and are provided to low-income communities, specifically for the empowerment of low-income families and individuals to become self-sufficient through the provision of employment services. The Reinvestment Act of 2009 includes something like $980 million for this purpose nationally, $89 million to come to California, and we could expect up to $400,000 for Placer County. The state has told us that they expect this process to be very expedited, and so we are bringing this to you today in order to make sure that we meet the timelines that we expect to come from the state. And so in an effort to be proactive, we're asking for the resolution to allow us to take the action that we know will be required to get these funds into Placer County. The Community Services Commission will make the specific recommendations, and then we will bring any subcontracts back to this board in the future. So the county retains a minimal portion of the grant for administration. The balance is always forwarded to the community or county subcontractors, depending on the service that we're purchasing. And again, the county general funds is required. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any
Recommend
questions?
approval.
Now, Mr. Chair, as your appointee to the Placer County Community Services Commission, I'd like to move approval of this action.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Greetings, board members. Chuck Gordon, Fleet Services. Here this afternoon to ask you to approve the award of purchase order to Snow Quip of West Sac in the amount of $416,180.63 for one LaRue T61 snowblower. We got $150,000 from the local air pollution district for grant funding. We're going to take out of service a 1973 Idaho Norland snowblower. It is a very dirty machine. So, and the new machine, I just pulled it up yesterday, actually, we've got one unit just like it. Burns 1/2 the fuel. That's how technology's changed. So, unless there's any questions.
What are you going to do with the old one?
Jennifer.
They'll allow it, we have 4 sister units. They're very close to sisters. So we're being allowed to park that, to use that for parts to support the other 4 machines. But it will be out of service and parked. And because they actually were built with basically obsolete parts at the time, supporting them is becoming a real issue too.
No chance of parking at the entrance of King Beach as entry?
Well, actually, the condition of the new one was it had to be parked in Supervisor Montgomery's driveway. She said she didn't want a sedan. So.
Yeah, forget that county car thing. I want a county snowblower.
Any other questions?
Have a motion?
Move for approval of the item.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Bob Laser, Public Works Department. Here with me is Kevin Tabor, our Roads Division Manager. And we'd like to share with you some of the details and successes in our snow removal operations. First, to set the stage, I'd like to share some important facts. First of all, we need to remember that the elevation in Placer County varies from near sea level to over 7,000 feet on our roads. And the county maintains over 1,000 miles of roadway, 200 of which fall within heavy snowfall areas, ranging up to 500 inches annually. But what's really unique about the county is that, and it's very, very important, is that Placer County has the highest average annual snowfall in the lower continental United States. So we're also then one of the highest in terms of snowfall costs throughout the state of California. Our presentation today will cover the following points very briefly. To talk about the current board policy, we'll go over the snow removal areas, talk a little bit about equipment usages, manpower and operations, and then finish up with costs of snow removal and some of the successes in our public outreach efforts. Public Works Department implements the adopted board policies on snow removal. We have designated roads in which we perform snow removal, but particularly I wanted to note the fact that the board has recognized that there are constraints to what we can do. Acts of God, available equipment and fuel, manpower shortages, fund impacts, and things of the like. The snow removal operations are broken down into basically 3 areas: the Tahoe Basin, the Colfax to Serene Lakes District, and Forest Hill and Auburn districts. Our presentation really will focus today on the Tahoe and Colfax and Serene Lakes areas. The Tahoe Basin is broken up into 10 plow zones, each having about 13 miles of county roadway. I'd like to have Kevin take over and talk a little bit about the equipment and operations. Kevin.
Thanks, Bob. Kevin Tabor. I'm the Public Works Manager for the Road Maintenance Division. And yeah, I'll go through my portion of the presentation relatively quickly. If you have any questions at the end, I'd be happy to answer them. Basically, we have 3 different types of equipment that we utilize in our snow removal program: graders, blowers, and push plow and sander trucks. So I'll talk about graders first. We have 10 of them in the Tahoe area. They're all Caterpillar models, 2000 model year or newer. 8 of those have snow gates, and I'll discuss the snow gates a little bit later on. We have 3 graders in the Colfax Serene District, and they're mid to late 70s, and none of those have snow gates. Here's a picture of a Caterpillar grader with the front plow in action in Tahoe, basically moving the snow from the center of the road to the side of the road to make it passable for motorists. Second up are the snow blowers. Once the grader with front plows have moved the snow to the edge of the road, we then have to blow it off the edge of the road to make room for the next storm. We have 7 blowers in the Tahoe area, 3 in the Colfax Serene District. In Tahoe, one of those is a 1957 Snow-Go, and that's in operation right there. 6 of them are 72 through 2007 vintage, and then we have 3 Norland snowblower in the Colfax Serene District. And that's one of the Norlands in operation right there. And then finally, we have the push plow sander trucks, 3 of those in the Tahoe Basin District area, 3 of those in the Colfax Serene area as well. And these are kind of our workhorses when we have lighter snows or snowfall in lower elevations. We get these trucks on the road with the front plow to clean up the roads, but then also they're key for our ice control and traction enhancement, if you will. That's the back of the truck, with the bed full of sand, and then just out of the picture is actually the sand spreader. We'll also send this out. Typically, one of our supervisors in the Tahoe district will run this machine when the rest of the crew are out running the blowers and/or graders. He'll take care of the school routes. He'll take care of the school routes before school starts. Hopefully, time his plowing just right so that the school buses have a little bit easier going. He'll plow it with the front plow or sand it as necessary. Oftentimes, between storm events, ice control is our major consideration. So we'll send these 3 trucks out, or 6 trucks between the 2 districts, just to take care of the hot spots or cold spots, if you will. Let's talk about the personnel that run this equipment in Tahoe. We have 11 full-time employees, 3 part-time employees who take care of parking enforcement to deal with the ne'er-do-wells who see fit to park in the middle of our operation. In Colfax, we have 8 full-time employees, and mentioned in Forest Hill, where we do plow snow from time to time, especially as we head east, we have 8 full-time employees in Forest Hill. That might sound like not very many people dedicated to snow removal, but basically our entire division is dedicated to snow removal when the snow really starts falling or flying. At times, we have over half our division working on snow removal. And I'd like to mention also that Chuck's division, Fleet Maintenance, supports us in our efforts. So that's in addition to the 45 people plus that we'd have working in snow removal. We have we plow on shifts, either 8, 12, or 24-hour shifts. As you can imagine, it's all weather dependent. In short duration or lighter snowfalls, we'll try and knock it out in an 8 or 12-hour shift in any area. And especially true, it has been lately anyways, in the Basin and Forest Hill areas, where we have more shorter duration storms. We don't see as heavy a snowfall as we do in the Serene Lakes area, which Supervisor Montgomery can attest to that. But as necessary, we will plow in a 24-hour shift 7 days a week and until it stops snowing or until we're cleaned up. You know, that's holidays included. Once again this year, all our guys involved in snow removal worked on Christmas Day, but that's just part of the job, and you know, they're more or less happy to be out there. Talk about operations a little bit, actually how the snow gets taken off the road. Here's that same picture, a grader working in Tahoe. A few things going on here. You have the front plow, which takes care of a majority of getting the snow off the road. But so the operator, he's not only working the front plow up, down, left, right. Oh, yeah, I do have a pointer. He's using the front plow up, down, left, right. He's using the center blade to clean up the stuff that the front plow doesn't get. He's worrying about the tilt of the wheels, the articulation of the machine. This particular machine does have a snow gate that you can't see. So you can imagine he's doing a lot of things all at the same time. Here's just a picture of the inside of the cab. It doesn't actually show all the levers. But in addition to steering, he's manipulating one or more of these levers all at the same time. Here's a grader in Serene Lakes, actually taking care of almost the entire roadway width in one fell swoop. But put this picture in here because you can. It was actually during a pretty heavy snowstorm, so you see the flash reflecting off the snowflakes there. That's not nearly as bad as it gets, and you can imagine at nighttime it makes it even that much more difficult. We also have to deal with heavy snowfall amounts in all areas from time to time, and sometimes we might only have a snow pole to guide us as we head down the road if there's a lot of snow on the road and you can't see the pavement beneath it. We also have to deal with obstructions such as parked cars, where'd my pointer go? Signs, road signs, stop signs, from time to time, even overhead lines. So all these things are going through the operator's mind as he's dealing with it. And in general, we try to take care of all of that with a smile. Now let's talk about snow gates briefly. Starting in 2005 in the Tahoe Basin, we implemented a snow gate program, which is intended to reduce, not eliminate, the size of berms that get carried across driveways. And that is a snow gate in the down position right there. This is a piece of equipment that mounts not to the front blade, not to the front plow, but to the center blade of a grader. So as the grader heads down the road, moving snow from the center of the road to the edge, where's the pointer? Moving snow from the center of the road to the edge, a windrow develops, on the edge of the road, and as it gets pushed down the road, of course, the potential is that this size of windrow or berm gets carried across a private driveway, which makes nobody happy, operators included, but maybe especially the private residents. So what the operator tries to do with the snow gate is reduce the size of that berm as it gets carried across a driveway. And so, as I explained before, he's got a bunch of different things going on at the same time. But here you see the gate in the up position as he approaches the driveway. So what he has to do is lift the front plow, put down the gate, and hopefully this windrow or berm of snow that he's pushing gets carried across the front of this driveway. And this little demonstration here will kind of show it in ideal conditions what can happen. So there you see the front plow going up, the gate's just about ready to go down. Hello. And so he's operating the machinery across the front of the driveway. The gate is in the down position, carrying across this, well, actually in this case, a smaller berm of snow across the front of the driveway. And again, this is working in almost ideal conditions because as he passes the driveway, he then, lifts up the gate, puts the front plow back down, and does it all over again at the next driveway. So in the perfect, is continuing on down the road. In perfect world, ideal conditions, he left little or no berm in front of this driveway. This resident's now very happy with us because he doesn't have to come out and shovel through a berm that we left.
Jennifer's driveway?
Hers is coming up. Yeah, in Serene, we do not have these snow gates in Serene Lakes. And part of the reason for that is because Serene Lakes does get so much more snow. When you get snowfall, generally over 8 inches on the roadway, the gates really aren't that effective. Because you saw the size of the gates, when you're moving that much snow off the edge of the road, the snow just billows over the top of the gate, even in its down position, and you still end up with a berm in the driveway. And so that's why I say it typically won't eliminate a berm, but it will reduce the size. And so this next series of photos, the operator in this instance, he's plowing the snow from the center of the road to the edge, and he's carrying a berm. He didn't use the berm gate here at all because this property owner, unoccupied residence, driveway's not even clear, so really no need to use the berm gate, because when they have their private driveway service clear the entire driveway, that's going to take care of that berm. So here's looking down the road is a plowed road. And in this particular instance, there was a lot of snowfall that had occurred overnight. So the snow's plowed from the center of the road to the edge. This nice big berm's pushed against the existing snowbank. As the operator approaches the driveway, he's going to go through that same operation. Lift up the front plow, put down the snow gate, and it's going to reduce the size. It's going to reduce the size of the berm as he carries it across the driveway. So you can see it started here, probably about 3 feet high. The gate did its job and reduced the size of the berm as he went across the driveway. But there was so much snow on the road, it billowed over the top of the gate and still left a berm. So instead of having a berm 3 feet across, it's still there, unfortunately, but it's the nature of the business, or the mother nature of the business, maybe. But it did reduce the size of the berm as it continued across the driveway. And you can see where he lifted the gate back up and the berm starts to get big again. So we do get complaints from time to time that the operators, they don't use the gates, they still have a berm. Well, I can testify that we did, and actually I shouldn't say we use the gates in this instance, because this is actually a picture taken from El Dorado County, where we've been told that they never get berms. But and just as an example, directly behind this driveway is this residence. It's unoccupied residence in El Dorado County. Yeah. Well, again, when he contracts with a private contractor to clear out his driveway, he'll take care of the berm at that time. But anyhow, that's Snowgate and berm removal, berm reduction in a nutshell. So I think with that, that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'll hand it back over to Bob.
Thank you, Kevin. In a nutshell, let me go over quickly the costs of snow removal operations. We're averaging about $2.5 million annually. Those come from the road funds. And particularly, I'd like to make mention of the new, recently approved $100,000 that the board allocated for additional snow removal and enhanced effort on the entrance roads into the resort areas. Actually, it was a very successful effort. We contracted with Pombo for the Squaw Valley, Maine, and heard some great feedback as to that effort. Lastly, I'd like to just talk about the public outreach that we've had. DPW has made significant improvements in the public outreach effort, particularly on the website. We've added links to snow removal pages to the most popular section of the county's main page, so a citizen can go right in, tap right into the snow removal page. And the snow removal website has a lot of information, facts about how it's done, what's being done, the operations. It has a lot of important links that people can tap into, links to other agencies, links to video cameras that will show real-time images as to what's happening out in the real world, real-time weather. So individuals can have a real close tie with existing data. We also have an important new section we added questions and answers to common concerns that the citizens have had. So we, in conclusion, believe that these continuing efforts and the support that the board has shown over the years with the graders, the gates, the additional TOT funds, the public outreach efforts, we believe that they have been successful providing improved service and reducing the number of complaints that we've received. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions or give any insight we can give you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of quick comments. The first is the road crews are phenomenal. They do a great job. I've had conversations with both Butch here on the lake and Lynn up in the Serene Lakes, Colfax area, and just if they didn't pass along my thanks to the crews, please do on my behalf. Kevin and I had discussed the gates issue, and I just want to let the board know that I am not advocating for expanded use of the gates. I think they serve a purpose, but the community was led to believe that they were going to be a panacea for berms, and they clearly are not. They're a help, but the community expectations were so high that we receive a lot of complaints about berms, even when the gates are in use. So I am not going to be encouraging the roads department to expand the use of the gates. They are expensive. They're difficult to maintain. When they break, the piece of equipment they're attached to is out of service until such time as the gate is repaired because all the hydraulics are tied together. They present some really potentially pretty catastrophic pitfalls in terms of being able to keep pieces of equipment on the road. I would encourage the, particularly here in the basin, the roads department to continue working with the schools. I've had a lot of complaints from the schools about inability of the buses to get to and from the schools, whether because snow built up too much on the hills, on the actual roadway, or in the case of Kings Beach, the roadways become so narrow that the buses can't turn the corners to get to and from school. So I would encourage continuing to focus on that. We've discussed it. I've discussed it with Butch. Not as much of an issue on Donner Summit and in Colfax. Something that I just wanted to give you a heads up on is I heard from Rob Kautz. He left a message from Sugar Bowl on my machine this morning, and he is going to be looking to the county potentially to become a funding source for snow removal on Old Highway 40, which is actually in Nevada County, but Sugar Bowl is in Placer County, and his argument is if we did that additional work for Alpine and Squaw and those resorts who create money in the county, why shouldn't we be doing the same for Sugar Bowl? So that needs at least to be on our radar. Again, thank you, and thank the crews for your great work.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say that you guys do a phenomenal job in my district. I've never had a complaint. Not one.
We like to hear that.
Yeah.
And I would echo that. I haven't had any complaints in my district. All right, item C now. Mr. Kratz. There was no action.
Greetings. Good afternoon. Peter Kratz, Public Works. This item relates to adopting qualified lists for construction management services for Public Works and Cedar projects. Specifically, Public Works worked with procurement services to develop lists of qualified consultants to provide construction management services. The services are to provide construction oversight of our various capital projects put forth by DPW, and Cedar will also have access to these consultants for their land development projects. Intensive advertising by the county occurred to gain interest, resulting in 35 firms submitting proposals to get on the qualified lists. Ultimately, the top 20 firms were determined through county staff evaluation, 10 associated with West Side projects and 10 with East Side projects. The listing of the firms are identified in your packet. Based on our anticipated workload over the next couple of years, we've put together 11 blank purchase orders developed and totaled $2,475,000 that provides for an efficient contracting system to utilize these top-ranking firms for our upcoming projects. The action requested today is exempt from CEQA. The BPOs themselves do not set aside money per se, but as funding allows, the BPO eliminates the request for proposal process, and once the scope of work and price is agreed on, services will be deployed for us. With that, I request that the board approve the action to adopt the two consultant lists as fully articulated in this agenda item happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? I have a motion.
Move for approval of the item.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
10D.
Yes.
Here again, Peter Kratz, and I have with me Brian Stewart, our senior engineer out of our Tahoe office, and he's going to present the meat of this item, but this is really an exciting milestone for us, for a project that truly is shovel-ready, the Tahoe City Transit Project. I really want to just quickly say that a lot of time's gone onto this, and a lot of thanks to Will Garner from the beginning of this project over 10 years ago, to now Brian Stewart and Nova Lansegi out of our Tahoe Design Division to really put this effort together and get this project ready for bid. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Brian, and he'll walk you through this request.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. Brian Stewart, Department of Public Works. I'm excited to bring the Tahoe City Transit Center in front of you. Recently, we just got approval by the TRPA board unanimously to move forward with this project. So we're here in front of this board to ask for permission to advertise this project and move it forward. Probably most of you have heard of the project, but basically what the project is an intermodal center where we can bring pedestrians, bicycles, different modes of transportation, transit system, as well as resort buses and whatnot to one facility where transfers can be made safely. Basically, it reduces the dependency on the automobile, which is the main thrust of the basin in getting people out of their private automobiles. You saw this slide earlier when Peter gave the presentation on the parking enforcement ordinance. Basically, just to give you a quick idea, that is 64-acre park that is outlined there, or track, as you'll hear it called. It's owned by the U.S. Forest Service. We are proposing the project to go right here in the corner, adjacent to Highway 89 there. There's existing facility that supports the raft and the uses of the site right now. Homewood is over there towards that way, and then Truckee to the top. Fanny Bridge sits right there, and then the Y is right there. Just to roll through it quickly, I'll blow up now onto the actual project in itself, and it has a parking lot. Oops, I went too far there. It has a parking lot of 130 spaces that will support not only the transit use, but as Peter said earlier, the downtown community as far as the recreation uses of bicycle, pedestrian access, and the shops around there. There will be a transit center itself that includes a loop here for the buses. The transit center is fairly small. It has office area, has two restrooms. It has a covered roof that supports allowing the buses to nudge in underneath and allows patrons to exit and enter the buses under a closed environment. Part of the environmental mitigation that we had to do to deal with the traffic impacts was to build a continuous left turn lane that's going to be constructed in front of the parcel itself, and then there will be right turn pockets to help avoid the delays that were produced by the project, and these improvements mitigate those. The inside enclosed area will allow up to 60 patrons, or sorry, 40 patrons, and then an outside waiting area includes another 60, so a total of 100 patrons could be waiting at the site in one particular time frame. Also, as part of the relocation of some of the bike trails in here, we are improving the bike trail connection through here. Currently, people have to go along Highway 89. Fanny Bridge sits up here. They have to travel along the highway itself on the shoulder there to access at this point that exists. We're going to be providing a trail so that they don't have to do that anymore. We took the environmental document, which, as Peter alluded to, had lots of work. Started in the late 1998 as far as scoping the project. And we took that and made it a better project, refined the project design. In essence, we tried to take the intermodals and minimize the footprint, be able to make that work better with respect to the parking, the pedestrians, and the bike trails all together in a more condensed space. By reducing that, we also saved the take of trees. The original design took 140 trees. We're now only taking 101 trees. Also reduced the scenic impact, by just combining everything and bringing it all in. It helps with respect to the complying with TRPA's ordinance with respect to the scenic corridors. As I alluded to, it helps tie in with all the pedestrian and bicycle networks and the multimodal transfers. We also were able to take advantage of some green building practices. This includes a flat roof, which will allow us to put some solar panels up there and create some generation of power to offset the snow melt system that it will be on the roof to capture the snow runoff and be able to recirculate and reuse that in the bathrooms or irrigation on the site. Some of the other green items that we've put in is pervious concrete. And we've had some success on it. One of the other members of the public talked about the pervious on Laurel Drive. It's working well, and so we're most of this lot right over here is going to be pervious concrete. Not only does one thing, it reduces the stormwater runoff as much as you're getting, but it also allows us to work closer to the tree root system and provides air to be able to get into those roots, and so we can save more trees with respect to using the pervious concrete. Also, there's going to be a below-grade infiltration system too, as far as some of the green on that. Just the building concept, that's an elevation view that you see there and what we're doing. We've worked hard with respect to the public and going out there. We've gone to NITRAC and the MAX. We've gone to Design Review Committee. We have been out on this in the world with respect to this project for some time. We've worked hard with the U.S. Forest Service to comply with their requirements as far as their Tahoe or built image environmental guide that they produce as far as building components and what they recommend and can allow when you build on their property. So this is some of the stuff that has been included to help support all those concerns. And then the exciting thing is the funding structure. We've worked hard over time to develop a fully funded project that we can move forward with, and we're excited that we're so close now. There's a couple things you'll hear. The ones in you can't see them, but the ones in orange there you'll be hearing shortly. The ones in yellow you will be. We're working on the final things. That money's there. It's just working on the process of dealing with the Federal Transit Authority and Caltrans to get through those hoops. But a myriad of federal, local, and state sources to be able to produce this project and in its entirety. So as far as schedule goes, with this action today, we'd like to move forward, finalize these funding agreements, and then get to construction this year. And it's an exciting time, and look forward to your support on the project. Peter?
Yeah, just to close it up, with this item, we ask for you to approve the project plans and specs, and so we can advertise here in short order. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do you have any motion?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Oh, did you have a question? No. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Hi, Barbara. Barbara Basana. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Morning. It's
Or, excuse me, good afternoon. We started early this morning. Okay. Item 11 is requesting that you approve the spending plan for the Remote Access Network Board, and that acronym is RAM, for $327,656 for this fiscal year and $444,414 for next fiscal year, as well as approving the budget revision that will add interest and the additional revenue anticipated this year the addition to the master fixed asset list for 9 mobile data computers, and then also authorizing the purchasing manager to execute all the related documents. These items were approved by your board in March of 2007 for the enhancement of mobile and fixed fingerprint identification. The RAND board is made up of 7 members, of which Supervisor Holmes represents the board, the sheriff, the district attorney, Mayor Holmes, the chief of Roseville, and the chief of Rockland, and a member at large. They met on March 30th and developed a plan that would provide the payments for LifeScan devices for this year and next, as well as provide the mobile data computers for Auburn and Placer County, and cite and release machines for the city of Rockland and the city of Roseville. Next year, the plan will include getting mobile identification devices, the wireless connection for those, and the connections to Department of Justice. The budget revision that you're requested to approve will add the interest of $11,000, the additional revenue anticipated of $68,000, and appropriate the funds to implement this plan. I'm available for questions should you have any.
Don't see any. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, wait a minute. Roll call.
Holmes?
Aye.
Bunyan?
Yeah.
Bueller?
Aye.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Geez, you had to wait that long for.
So the board will now go into closed session. I assume we're doing that here, so that means the rest of you get to leave. We'll take up the items on page 4, item 12, litigation, labor, real property, and while in closed session, we will meet as the in-home supportive services public authority to do labor discussions for that also. And we'll report out later.
I guess it's
It's a redevelopment agency, yes, thank you, Ann. The redevelopment agency is doing real property.